Good morning and welcome to the Senate Committee on Commerce and Labor. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Daly. Here. Senator Ellison. Present. Senator Flores.
Present.
Senator Lang. Here. Senator Rogish. Here. Senator Scheibel. Senator Steinbeck. Here. Chair Pazina.
Present. Thank you so much. Not only do we have a quorum, I'm excited to say we have everyone here and present. Welcome to the members of our audience in Carson City, as well as those joining us in Las Vegas and those following along online. Before we begin, I'd like to make a few housekeeping announcements. First, I'd like to remind everyone to please silence all of your electronic devices while in the committee room. Members of the public may provide testimony in various ways, all of which are listed on the agenda. You may also submit public comment in writing, either in addition to testifying or in the place of testifying. If you wish to testify in person, though, please do sign in at the table by the door and provide our committee secretary with your business card. When testifying in person, please turn on the microphone to speak and off to listen, as we have those that are also listening in Las Vegas as well as following along online. And please do state and spell your name for the record. Anyone who'd like to receive electronic notifications of scheduled bills and access to the committee's meeting materials may do so by signing up on Nellis on the legislative website. Committee members will be using our laptops to view handouts and other exhibits. Please do not view this as a sign of disrespect or inattention. And with that, we are going to move to our first item on the agenda, which today we are going to take things a little out of order. We're going to start with our work session, and then we'll go into our bill hearings. Depending on whether the Attorney General is here, we'll start with AB 44. If he is not, we will start with AB 183, and then we'll move on from there. And we will go in order, again, depending on who is present for those hearings. So, starting with our work session this morning, we'll use 2 consent calendars to process bills of a non-controversial nature in a more efficient and less time-consuming manner. And I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Ashton, who'll give you some instructions and then summarize the measures on our very first consent calendar.
Thank you, Chair Pazina and committee members. For the record, this is Patrick Ashton, Research Division, Legislative Council Bureau. As non-partisan staff, I can neither advocate nor oppose any measures before you today. Members, you all received by email and should have on your desk a copy of the combined work session document. This document contains 2 consent calendars, one for measures without any proposed amendments on page 3, the other with proposed amendments on page 12. Additionally, the combined work session document has 3 bills that will be considered separately during this work session. The bills on the consent calendars do not have further discussion or debate. If any member wishes to discuss, debate, or vote no on one or more bills on the consent calendar, the member may request that the item be removed from the consent calendar with the chair's approval. Bills that are removed from the consent calendar may have further discussion and a separate vote. We will start with the consent calendar for bills without amendments on page 3. The following measures are on the consent calendar. AB 21, which revises provisions relating to unemployment compensation. AB 116, which revises provisions relating to food delivery service platform providers. AB 196, which revises provisions governing psychology. AB 258, which revises provisions relating to brokerage agreements. AB 305, which limits the amount a provider of healthcare may charge for filling out certain forms associated with certain leaves of absence. AB 407, which enacts provisions relating to the repair of certain devices. AB 498, which revises provisions to motor clubs. And AB 510, which makes various changes to the regulation of accountancy. Members, you can find detailed summaries for these bills on pages 4 through 11 of the combined work session document. And Chair Pazina, this concludes my summary of the bills in a first consent calendar without any proposed amendments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ashton. Does anyone have any questions or comments about the process with consent calendars? Okay. Does anyone want to pull a bill from the first consent calendar for further discussion? Okay. With that, I'll now entertain a motion to do pass for the remaining bills on the consent calendar as summarized by Mr. Ashton.
Madam Chair, move to do pass AB 21, 116, 196, 258, 305, 407, 498, and 510 from the first consent agenda.
Thank you so much. We have a do pass from Vice Chair Daly. Is there a second?
Second.
A second from Senator Flores. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Thank you so much. The motion carries. We will do pass AB 21, 116, 196, 258, 305, 407, 498, and 510. And with that, we will move to our next consent calendar. Oh, floor statements. Oh, good times. All right, let's see. Do we have any volunteers for floor statements? Not seeing any volunteers, I'm going to go down the line, and we'll starting at my right. So for AB 21, Senator Steinbeck will be assigned the floor statement. For AB 116, Senator Scheibel. For AB 196, we have Senator Lang. For AB 258, I'll take that one. For AB 305, we have Senator Daly. For AB 407, we have Senator Flores. For AB 498, we have Senator Rogish. And for AB 510, we have Senator Ellison. And look at that, it worked out perfectly. And with that, we will move to the next consent calendar. Thank you so much, Mr. Ashton.
For the record, Patrick Ashton, Research Division, Legislative Council Bureau. You can find the second consent calendar for measures with proposed amendments on pages 12 and 13. And again, I will briefly summarize the bills and amendments for this one. First item is AB 121, which revises provisions governing landlords and tenants. The proposed amendment clarifies that landlords can accept checks for certain payments, requires landlords to disclose all mandatory fees, and exempts landlords of certain housing units from disclosure requirements under certain circumstances. Next measure is AB 142, and Chairperson, it's my understanding this bill will be removed from the consent calendar?
Yes, thank you so much. I believe the amendment was removed from that, and because the amendment was removed when the committee was given the consent calendar to review, we will take that out of the calendar and just move it separate. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. For the record, Patrick Ashton, LCB. Next bill on the consent calendar is AB 198, which establishes provisions relating to certain inflatable devices. The amendment provides that anchoring stakes must be of non-corrosive metal and meet certain other requirements, removes the requirement that both weights and stakes must be used, and instead provides that stakes or weights can be used, and makes conforming changes. Item 4 on the consent calendar is Assembly Bill 215, which revises provisions relating to employment. The proposed amendment makes a violation of federal law governing hours of work and conditions of employment permitted for a child under the age of 16 years, a violation of NRS governing employment of minors. Item 5 is AB 450, which revises requirements to obtain a license as a marriage and family therapist or clinical professional counselor by endorsement. The proposed amendment retains the deleted phrase, any other information required by the board. And members, you can find more detailed summaries for these bills and amendments on pages 14 through 20 of the combined work session document. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ashton. Does anyone want to pull any of the bills from this consent calendar? Okay. Not seeing anyone, I'll now entertain a motion to do pass, is it amend and do pass? Amend and do pass, sorry about that. Amend and do pass the bills on the consent calendar as summarized by Mr. Ashton. Thank you so much. We have a first from Senator Scheibel to amend and do pass AB 121, AB 198, AB 215, and AB 450, and we have a second from Vice Chair Daly. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Wonderful, the motion carries, and now some more floor statements to assign. AB 121, since you were our first, Senator Scheibel, that's going to go to you. AB 199, Senator Rogish, you and I discussed that one, so that one will go to you. AB 215 will go to Senator Steinbeck. Wonderful, I love volunteers. And AB 450, do we have any volunteers? We'll go to Senator Lang. All right, with that said, Mr. Ashton, on to our next work session document, and thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. For the record, Patrick Ashton, Research Division, LCB. We will now go to Assembly Bill 142, which was heard on April 28th. AB 142 adds a civilian employee of a law enforcement agency whose primary duties involve responding to and investigating crime scenes to the list of persons who constitute a first responder who may receive industrial insurance compensation for various stress-related claims under certain circumstances. On the bill page, there's an amendment listed, but Mr. McCann Consulting notified the committee that he would like to retract this amendment, and there are no further amendments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions on Assembly Bill 142? Okay. Not seeing any questions, I'll now entertain a motion to do pass Assembly. Thank you so much. We have a motion from Senator Lang, I believe that was. Do we have a second? Second. All right, Senator Scheibel beat you by a millisecond. It was a close finish there. Do we have any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Wonderful. Assembly Bill 142 will be assigned to, do I have any volunteers? It will be assigned to Senator Flores. All right, thank you so much. And with that, Mr. Ashton, our next bill, please.
For the record, Patrick Ashton, Research Division, LCB. Assembly Bill 112 was heard on May 5th. This bill removes an exemption for employees covered under a valid collective bargaining agreement from provisions requiring a private employer that provides employees with sick leave to allow an employee to use accrued sick leave for an absence due to an illness, injury, medical appointment, or other authorized medical need of a member of the employee's immediate family. Amendments. Assemblymember Wynne proposed the attached conceptual amendment to the bill page during the bill hearing, which removes the term paid time off benefit from Section 1, subsection 4E on page 2, line 35. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ashton. Do we have any questions on Assembly Bill 112? Not seeing any, I'll entertain a motion to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 112.
Motion to amend and do pass AB 112.
We have a motion from first from our vice chair. Do we have a second?
Second.
I think this time Senator Flores won it by a hair. All right, is there any discussion? Senator Steinbeck.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to vote to pass this out of committee, but reserve my right to change. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do we have any further discussion? Senator Ellison.
I'm going to reserve my right.
Okay, Senator Ellison is also going to reserve his right. And with that, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Okay. So please let it be noted that this did pass unanimously, though both Senator Steinbeck and Ellison did reserve their right. And with that, the motion carries to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 112, and I will assign that to Vice Chair Daley. All right. Mr. Ashton.
For the record, Patrick Ashton, Research Division, LCB. Next bill on the work session is Assembly Bill 280, which was heard on April 30th. This bill requires a landlord who collects any fee from a prospective tenant who applies to rent a dwelling unit to refund the fee if the landlord rents the dwelling unit to a different prospective tenant and does not conduct the activity for which the fee was collected, among other provisions. Thank you, Chair. There were no amendments, sorry.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ashton. All right, with that, do we have any questions on Assembly Bill 280? Okay, no questions. I'll entertain a motion to do pass Assembly Bill 180. I have a first from Senator Scheibel. Do I have a second? A second from Vice Chair Daley. Is there any discussion? On 280, excuse me. Senator Steinbeck.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to vote no on this, again, reserving my right. Certainly if the rent control portion could be at some point in time amended or addressed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Steinbeck. Do we have any other discussion on this one? Senator Ellison.
Hoping there's going to be an amendment come through, and I haven't seen it yet. So.
Okay. Thank you so much. We have had discussion from Senators Steinbeck and Ellison on Assembly Bill 280, which revises provisions relating to housing. And I apologize, I had said 180, probably thinking about groundwater boards from last session. which for whatever reason that bill stuck in my head. Do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Okay, please note that we have a nay from Senator Steinbeck, Rogish, and Ellison. None of them will be assigned the floor statement. However, the motion does carry to do pass Assembly Bill 280, and I will assign the floor statement to Senator Flores. All right, and with that, I believe we have one more bill on the agenda, and I will hand it back to Mr. Ashton.
For the record, Patrick Ashton, Research Division, LCB. Next bill on work session is Assembly Bill 411, which was heard on April 30th. This bill authorizes the prescribing practitioner of certain prescription drugs, their generic alternatives, to request to have the practitioner's name replaced on the prescription label with the name of the prescribing healthcare practice. Amendments. Assemblymember Jauregui proposes the attached conceptual amendment to the bill page, which provides in Section 1, subsection 3, that the labeling for such a prescription may include the name of the prescribing healthcare practice instead of the name of the practitioner. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ashton. Do we have any questions on AB 411? Okay, not seeing any questions, I'll accept a motion to, was this do pass or amend? A motion to amend and do pass on Assembly Bill 411. We have a first from Senator Scheibel. Do I have a second?
Second.
I think Senator Daly might have, I don't know. It's hard to tell. We'll give it to Senator Daly, but maybe the floor statement will go to you. Okay. Thank you so much. With that, do we have any discussion? Okay. Senator Ellison is a no. All right. With that, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Okay, please note that we have a nay from Senators Ellison, Rogish, and Steinbeck, and the motion will carry, and I will assign the floor statement to AB 411 to Senator Scheibel. All right. I believe that takes us to the end of our work session. Thank you all for your patience this morning. I do not see our illustrious Attorney General right now, so we are going to start this morning with Assembly Bill 183, which revises provisions relating to optometry. We welcome you up to the table, Assemblymember Koenig, and any co-presenters you may have, and we thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Chair Pazina, and thank you for the Senate Committee on Commerce and Labor. My name is Greg Koenig. I represent Assembly District 38, which has 5 rural counties between Fallon and Tonopah. So the genesis of AB 183 is I carried a bill for the State Board of Optometry last session, and we got to one point where there wasn't complete agreement on the board, and the board at this time, it consists of 4 persons. And so I was carrying the bill forward, and we had 2 of the members of the board that were of one opinion and 2 of the members of the board that were of a different opinion, which seems like a pretty inefficient way to run a board with a 4-person that can have a tie. So my contribution to this bill was I wanted to add a 5th person to the State Board of Optometry to avoid the possibility of ties. And then once we opened up this bill to make that change, the board also had some things that they wanted to do with this bill. And so I'm going to turn the rest of this over to Mariah Smith, who is the president of the State Board of Optometry, to explain the rest of the changes to this bill.
Hi, this is Mariah Smith, Nevada State Board of Optometry President. As Dr. Koenig said, our bill is a lot of cleanup and then some things that make us more in line with some of the other boards that exist. In the interest of time, I'm happy to elaborate on any of the sections you'd like to, but the key ones that I think we should focus on are Section 3, which just gets our license suspension process in line with other boards, where we have a ability to do a cease and desist to a bad actor in a more immediate way. And again, just to stop them from doing whatever might be harming the public in the same format that the other boards are doing theirs, like the MD board. In Section 5 and 9.5, there is no scope expansion here, just to be clear. The medications that optometrists can prescribe are Schedules 3 through 5, and there's a limit on the morphine equivalents that can be there. So like Tylenol has a morphine equivalent, and that is just telling optometrists to what amount they can prescribe any medication in Schedules 3 through 5, and it has to be related to the eye and adnexa, as it currently is. It's just a clarification. And then in Sections 6 and 7, as Dr. Koenig already said, to break ties and also allow for the investigative process. If we want to assign a board member to be an investigator on a case, we still have enough board members to vote if that person needs to abstain from a vote, but also allow for there not to be a tie in our votes. I'll allow for questions if you guys have any questions.
So the presentation, just to confirm, is there anything further in the presentation, or you're both ready for questions?
I think we're ready for questions.
Okay, great. We'll start with Vice Chair Daley and then potentially move to someone else.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I do have a couple, but you may have to come back. That's fine. So the first one in Section 3 stated that that's the process that other boards are using. And if I read it correctly, so a person there can be a complaint or some issue that causes the suspension by the board, and then you go through a process within the 60 days, and then if there's no complaint against the person when the deadline comes, then they're reinstated. So generally, does that happen? Or is there any way for the person who is accused but then found to be innocent to recover any lost time? And I don't know what the other boards do, and
We're going to allow Adam Schneider to speak. He's in Las Vegas right now. He's on our telemonitor. He's our executive director, and he can go over that process better.
Adam Schneider for State Board of Optometry. I'm its executive director. So this section is actually predicated upon two other healthcare provider chapters, right? So in other words, there's 630.326, which is the medical board, and 633.581, which is the OD board. Neither of those chapters speak to lost time or lost wages. In other words, there's the focus is when there's credible evidence that's presented to the board, and the board votes to say, based upon what we're seeing here, there's essentially a probable cause finding that a cease and desist must exist. Then the board will timely, expediently, essentially as fast as possible, convene while allowing the licensee due process to provide them with essentially counter evidence of why the allegations are not unprofessional conduct. And so to answer the senator's question, as it relates to lost time or money, no, that does not exist in this bill, nor in the other statutes.
okay, thank you. I was just curious if it's what's in place and there hasn't been issues. I'm okay, I guess. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, Greg Koenig for the record. We weren't trying to reinvent the wheel. We were just doing what other boards are doing.
Yeah, understood, and it's usually a good place to start, right? Second question, if I can. So in Section 8, Sub 2A2, where it talks about as past each part of the comprehensive national optometry examination, I don't think that's bad language. It just seems to me that if they're already presenting an unrestricted license in another state and we have this national exam, so is the national exam used by basically every state? It seems to me they would have already passed that test if they have that unrestricted license.
Mariah
Adam
Smith.
Schneider for
Go ahead. Go ahead, Adam.
Adam Schneider as executive director for the board. So the Section 8 is actually predicated off of what is happening nationally, where other states, in particular Kentucky, is allowing students who do not pass the national test to say, that's okay, go ahead and take another test from Canada, which is not apples for apples. It is not the equivalent. And by virtue of having reciprocity, we expose the public to a risk of persons who did not pass the national test practicing in Nevada. So that is the catalyst for Section 8.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Then in Section 9, we're removing the successful completion in not fewer than 40 hours of ethical or clinical training, in administering prescribing pharmaceutical agents. Is that covered someplace else? I was just curious why we were removing that language or that training, especially in light of the declaration in subsection 2 on why we even have the board.
Greg Koenig for the record. So this 40 hours was something you had to do before you could get your ability to prescribe medication. So you've gone through 8 years of college, 4 years of optometry school, and taken multiple pharmaceutical classes. And then you graduate. My son just graduated a year ago right now. Then you graduate. He's got to go shadow an ophthalmologist for 40 hours before he can apply to prescribe drugs. You're not learning how to prescribe drugs in 40 hours shadowing an ophthalmologist after you've taken multiple classes in graduate school on pharmacology. So the ophthalmologists are fine with this. It was almost a nuisance for them to have a bunch of optometrists following them around for a week. And I just don't feel that we just didn't feel, and the board didn't feel that it was productive or accomplishing anything at this point.
Understood. So you feel it's redundant and it's already covered, and I'm fine. You defer to experts sometimes as well. So Section 12 and 13, can you maybe just, how can some of the eye exam stuff be done through telemedicine, right? If you have to do eye drops, if you have to do the deal where you're checking for glaucoma or whatever. So what's involved in the telemedicine? What can be done? What can't be done? I know we've had concerns and issues over that in past legislation.
Yeah, Greg.
So I'm just curious. Go ahead.
Greg Koenig again for the record. So we are, it's really pretty limited in what we're planning on doing. So the example I use is, I have practices in Fallon and Fernley and Yerington and Dayton. And so my Yerington and Fallon practices see lots of patients from Tonopah and Round Mountain and all these other places. They're driving 3+ hours to get to my examination. So the way that I'm using it in my practice is someone comes to my office, especially if they're previous patients, they're doing contact lenses. I fit them with contact lenses. The protocol typically is I give you a pair of contacts, you wear them for a week or so, you come back, and then if everything is working fine, then I'll write you a prescription and finalize that prescription. So what I'm doing now with my patients from Tonopah and Round Mountain, especially if they've worn them before, they come to their initial exam, I give them the pair of contact lenses, they leave. At the week, I contact them telephonically. And if there aren't any issues and they're working fine, especially if they're a previous patient, I will finalize that prescription for them telephonically or telemedically and save them a 3 hours in for a 5-minute appointment where I say, look, yes, these are fine, good, they're finalized, and then they got to turn in and drive 3 hours home. So it's saving them that 6 hours in the car for something basic like that. It's not a full exam. It's not, again, or if they need a refill on a prescription for an eye infection, something that I've already seen them once. But their initial visit has to be with me in person, and then some of those follow-up visits can be done telemedically and save people the trip.
So
I don't know.
Go ahead.
Mariah Smith for the record, if I can just piggyback on, actually all of that was all done in the last bill. All of the telemedicine stuff and the construct where the doctor needs to be Nevada licensed, there has to have been a comprehensive exam that already happened. This is just clarifying that for the board's purposes, when we need to follow up on a complaint, that telemedicine, optometric telemedicine, falls under the practice of optometry so that we can say it falls under our jurisdiction, our rules. Thank you.
So the framework that was just outlined, that the first exam has to be in person, and then some of the follow-up, easier to do stuff can be done telemedicine. I just wanted to make sure, trust but verify and all that stuff. I know we had issues over that very issue. My last question, Madam Chair, if I can, and it's just a confusion thing for me when I read Section 16, and some of this is existing language. So after providing notice in a hearing pursuant to 622A of NRS, you can impose an administrative fine. Then when I get down there to, I think starts on line 13, to appeal the citation, the person must submit to the board written request for hearing, and the board shall provide notice and conduct a hearing pursuant to 622A. So are we two different hearing officers? What are we doing?
I'm going to let Adam Schneider speak in Las Vegas.
Adam Schneider, for the record, 622A is the administrative law code. So what the board is doing is saying within our structure, we're still adhering to 1, open meeting law, and 2, the administrative acts, but within the confines of the optometry practice. And so this is for citations that are truly administrative in nature. The failure to timely submit a type of form that has nothing to do with the actual practice of optometry as far as clinical and patient interaction. So it's more of a clerical issue.
And I understand 622A provides a framework for your board hearing officer to follow, so everybody knows what the procedure is, and what to expect, and when they have to put in evidence or whatever they're going to do, right? And you have to have a hearing under 622A, and I'm saying, is that under the board? Do you guys have a hearing officer, et cetera? And then you come to a conclusion and you administer a citation. That's what it says in the very first section, of not more than $5,000 for each violation. Then when you get down, starting on line 13, to appeal a citation, a person must submit to the board. And again, is it going to be, I am appealing to the same persons that just found me guilty and say, no, I strenuously object, right? Or do you have a different hearing officer that then just uses 622A as the framework again?
So Adam Stein, for the record, just to clarify, lines 3 through 17 within section 16 are already in existence. They have been on the books for X amount of years already. As it relates to the sequence of events or the persons overseeing the appeal, I think we would just go with what may already be in 622A, because obviously we cannot deviate from 622A as far as who the persons would be adjudicating the appeal.
You're not giving me very much confidence, and I understand it's existing language. I'm just asking the question on how you have your first hearing in prosecution, if you will, under 622A by who knows, and then your appeal is through the same process. I'm just trying to establish that it's two different events with two different sets of hearing officers so you can have a legitimate appeal. That was all. And it's not that big of a deal. Thank you for the time, Madam Chair.
Senator Daly, Greg Koenig for the record. I mean, the optometry board isn't a big organization. I don't think we have multiple appeal people on staff.
Do we have any other questions this morning on Assembly Bill 183? Okay. Not seeing any further questions, we'll have you take a step back from the table. Thank you so much. And we will ask for anyone who'd like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 183 to come forward in our physical location, starting in Carson City and Las Vegas, and then we'll move to the phones. I don't see anyone coming forward in either of our physical locations, so we are going to move to the phone lines broadcast. Do we have anyone on the phone lines who'd like to testify in support of AB 183?
If you would like to testify in support of AB 183, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, you have no callers in support at this time.
Thank you so much. And while we have you broadcast, is there anyone who'd like to testify in opposition of AB 183 on the phone line?
If you would like to testify in opposition of AB 183, please press star 9 now. Chair, you have no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you so much. Do we have anyone in our physical locations who'd like to testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 183? Okay, not seeing anyone coming forward. Is there anyone in our physical locations who'd like to testify in neutral on Assembly Bill 183? Still not seeing anyone. Broadcaster, back to you. Is there anyone on the phone lines who'd like to testify in neutral on AB 183?
If you would like to testify neutral on AB 183, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, you have no callers neutral at this time.
Thank you so much. Would you like to make any closing statements? Okay. With that, thank you so much. We will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 183, and we will open the hearing on Assembly Bill 231, which revises certain service contracts to impose certain duties upon the provider of the service contract. We'll welcome Assemblymember Hunt, and I believe we also have a Zoom link out to Mr. Jonathan Norman as well. And you may begin when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson and members of the Senate Commerce and Labor Committee. I'm nervous. Wait a minute. Sorry. Okay. I am Assemblymember Hunt, Linda Hunt for the record, and I represent Assembly District 17 in North Las Vegas. And I am here to present Assembly Bill 231, which requires a service contract to specify certain duties of the service contract provider. With me today is Jonathan Norman, Esquire, up in Vegas, and Taylor Altman, Esquire, members of the Nevada Coalition of Legal Service Providers. Now I'd like to give you all some background information about AB 231. When big things in your home break, like a heater or air conditioning system, they can cost lots of money to fix. Some people buy home warranties or service contract to help cover these costs. There are different types of options depending on the company and the amount you pay. But these contracts typically provide protection for repairs, maintenance, or replacement due to a defect in material, workmanship, or normal wear and tear. They last for a set amount of time and can cost extra money. In conversation with my constituents, I have heard recurring concerns about service contracts, particularly about home warranty companies that are not timely in fixing the problems. They may take a long time to send out a technician to repair a covered issue, such as a malfunctioning air conditioning unit during periods of extreme heat. As we all know, in Las Vegas during the summer, temperatures frequently reach 110 to 115 degrees. In fact, the record high in Las Vegas last summer was 117 degrees. Despite these extreme conditions, home warranty companies often fail to respond efficiently, leaving residents without a functional air conditioner for an extended period of time. Many seniors and families in this situation have turned to news outlets to bring attention to their cases in hopes of expediting services. The solution proposed in AB 31 is to hold home warranty companies and their primary contractors accountable for the service a person has paid for. This includes mandating timely response and repairs within the allowed time outlined in the bill. 2, requiring main contractors to fulfill their obligation directly to ensure that subcontractors meet the same standards. 3, implementing penalties for contractors and warranty companies that fail to meet these timelines. And 4, establishing clear communication protocols between contractors, warranty companies, and consumers to avoid unnecessary delays. And with that, I would like to start, show you a video. Can you show me?
You about problems with your AC and how you've waited for repairs, especially through your home warranty. A family reached out to us. They say they've had a broken AC since June 5th. We reached out to their home warranty, but we also reached out to the Nevada Division of Insurance for guidance. If you're having home warranty headaches, how can filing a complaint with the state help? Fox 5 is getting answers.
I'm getting your dad out of here right away. It stays at 99 all the time.
For weeks, it was not safe for Victor and Maria Portillo and pregnant daughter Jacqueline to be inside for too long. Victor is 86 years old and has stage 4 cancer. Their daughter is 8.5 months pregnant. Since June 5th, the family has had a broken AC. June 6th, the contractor did come out, but for weeks they waited for parts and repairs through their home warranty, and they had been staying at a hotel.
I needed a new condenser and evaporator coil, which I have to pay out of pocket $2,100. And then they stated they wouldn't deliver until July 22nd. He's passed out at least 5 times. It's very difficult. With one sick person, I have the other one ready to deliver.
On the 18th, Fox 5 reached out to the home warranty company. The company says a part was back ordered. By the 20th, a repair crew finally came, but the AC has had problems every day since.
A home warranty company has an obligation to react within a certain time frame, especially in a period of emergency, which is now, when temperatures are 105 or greater. We review all complaints to make sure that the consumer's rights are not being mistreated.
Commissioner Scott Kipper of the Nevada Department of Insurance explains, if you are dealing with delays from your home warranty, you can file a complaint for state officials to investigate. The DOI allows companies to operate in the state and makes sure they're following the terms of your contract. Once you've filed a complaint, state officials will review it. They may ask your home insurance for answers and results.
They have 3 days to notify the consumer. They have 3 days in which to reach out to a contractor to initiate the work. They're also required to notify the Division of Insurance of those actions.
So how do you file a complaint? We have the link how on this story on our website. As for the Portillo family, a repair crew had to come back Sunday. They added Freon. The AC worked fine for a day. Now the Portillo's house can't get below around 80 degrees. We will bring you updates once their AC is completely fixed.
The state does some things even my 6th graders wonder about. Like commissioning a study and spending thousands of hours finding out how much.
Thank you, guys. Linda Hunt for the record. So now I would like to turn it over to Taylor Altman, Esquire, to go over the bill and the recommended conceptual amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember Hunt. Good morning, Madam Chair Pazina and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Taylor Altman, Tayloraltman. I am a staff attorney in the Consumer Rights Project at Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada. Thank you for the opportunity to present here today on AB 231 regarding the duties of home warranty service contract providers. Madam Chair, may I now present a walkthrough of the bill with the proposed conceptual amendment uploaded to Nellis by Assemblymember Linda Hunt?
Yes, please proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. For enhanced consumer protection, especially for low-income and underserved Nevadans, the proposed changes to NRS 690C.260 seek to clarify the home warranty service provider's duties and set deadlines for the restoration of defective air conditioners, heaters, furnaces, and other goods. I will now walk through the bill with the proposed conceptual amendment, and then I will be happy to answer any questions you may have. Section 1, subsection 1G, sets out the duties of a provider of a home warranty service contract. Subsection G1 ensures that the goods described in the home warranty service contract are restored within 16 business days after receiving notice from the contract holder that the goods are defective. Subsection G2 adds duties of the home warranty provider with regard to air conditioners, furnaces, and heaters. This subsection requires that the air conditioner, furnace, or heater be restored within 5 business days after receiving notice from the contract holder that the goods are defective. If the provider fails to restore the good within that prescribed period, the provider must provide the holder a per diem allowance for lodging at the same rate as the comparable rate for federal employees pursuant to federal law until such time as the goods are restored. The proposed conceptual amendment, however, amends the time period to 3 calendar days after receiving such notice. Subsection G3 describes what happens when the repair fails and the goods again become defective. The subsection requires that if a provider restores the goods and they become defective again within 14 business days after the date on which they were restored, The provider must then restore the goods within 2 business days after receiving notice. The proposed conceptual amendment amends the time period to 30 business days rather than 14 business days after the date on which the goods were restored. Section 1, subsection 3A defines the term home warranty service contract. And last but not least, Section 1, subsection 3B defines the term restored. So that covers the bill and the proposed conceptual amendment. We are now more than happy to address any questions regarding the bill and the conceptual amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Are you guys ready for questions?
Linda Hunt for the record. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much for the presentation. And do we have any questions from the committee? Senator Rogish.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. I have a quick question with regard to the per diem rates. What happens when the per diem rate is insufficient to cover the actual costs of the hotel and the other expenses?
Linda Hunt for the record. Well, we came up with a governmental per diem, so it can be fair all the way across the board. So anything in addition to whatever the hotel room rate is, that would fall on the customer. Because we were trying to avoid the fact of people wanting to stay at the Bellagio or the Wynn. We just wanted to make it fair. And so that's how we came up with that.
Thank you so much. I had a couple questions as well, and then we'll see if anyone else on the committee does. So I guess one of the things that occurred to me, especially where we are right now, where we've been since the pandemic, where we're looking at being post-tariff, I'm worried about supply chain. So I think the intent is it's a wonderful intent, and the intent is always to get parts repaired as soon as possible. But my concern is with supply chain challenges, if a part just physically can't come in. And with the workforce challenges we've had since the pandemic, it seems like the amendment maybe made this a little, it tightened the timeline instead of expanding it, which I understand if it's possible, but if it's physically impossible, there doesn't seem to be any wiggle room. So I guess that's where I'm a little bit nervous, just because I understand how challenging it is to get things with the supply chain right now. And my organization, as well as many others, I think have been facing these workforce challenges. So have those been taken into consideration?
Linda Hunt for the record. I'll turn that over to Jonathan Norman for the legal side of it.
Assemblymember Hunt, I can address this question. Thank you, Chair Pizzina. Taylor Altman for the record. So we understand the concern about the supply chain tariff issues and so forth. However, the timelines that are prescribed by AB 231 are based on the presumption that the home warranty service provider is in a better place, a better position than the consumer to understand how the supply chain issues and other economic factors are going to impact their business. So part of the cost and part of the responsibility of doing business in the home warranty service space is navigating those economic factors, planning ahead for shortages, delays, supply chain issues, and other adverse circumstances. When a consumer signed, or actually the purpose of the bill, AB 231, is for transparency and consumer expectation. So when a consumer signs a home warranty service contract, they expect that the goods covered by that contract will be restored in a timely fashion, and the provider should bear that burden. The burden is on the provider, again, who is better placed to make those business decisions and plan ahead. We're not talking about brief delays here. We're talking about, like in the video that was shown today, the news story on Fox 5, 50 or 60 delays, 60-day delays. If providers know that a repair can't be made within 60 days, perhaps that's not the right business for them. So that's something that the provider has to take on, in our opinion.
Ms. Altman, thank you so much. And, I guess what I would say there is a couple things. One is I would love to hear the conversations that have happened with the providers. And I understand, because 60 days is absolutely unacceptable. But the amendment looks to move it from 5 days to 2 days, which is a much, much tighter timeline. So or excuse me, from 5 days to 3 days. So were any of the warranty companies part of the discussion when you were coming up with that? Because there's a big difference between 60 days and 3 days.
This is Jonathan Norman for the record. Thank you for the question. We've discussed, or Assemblymember Hunt has had discussions with the service providers. I think they will be in opposition to this bill. One thing I would point out is, the consumer, if you're in that section with the 3 days only applies to air conditioners and heaters. And so if you're in northern Nevada in the winter and your heater's out and your expectation is repair, or you're in southern Nevada in the summer, it just says that the home warranty company would be obligated to provide that governmental rate for alternate housing. And if we think about a consumer, 2 days or 3 days in Las Vegas in 115-degree heat is already probably too much for most people. So I think that's where Assemblymember Hunt decided to settle on the bill, is that if you have 3 days without a repair to those critical systems, that you should have alternate housing made available by the business responsible for making that repair.
Okay. Senator Scheibel.
Thank you, Assemblymember Hunt, for being here, and thank you to Legal Aid for the presentation. I think my question is really the same as Chair Pazina's, but maybe I can ask it just in a little bit more direct way, which is that I noticed that this bill came out party lines on the Assembly side. I've been approached by the service providers. I understand that this bill has not been easy to move through the process, and so I'm wondering, why in the world would you submit an amendment that makes it more strict instead of an amendment that brings more people on board with the concept?
Linda Hunt for the record. Thank you for the question. The amendment was already in place, and I had discussed that with the service contract providers. I had many discussions with them, tried to, come halfway, tried to, even with members of both sides, of the Assembly, the Senate, trying to see where it would be a middle ground. And this is the language that we came up with. What I was getting from the service contract providers is they wanted me to basically gut the bill to where it didn't have the consumer protections that the constituents asked me to do. I did everything that I possibly could to try to meet halfway with them. And I could not take away what the constituents have put me here to do, to support them, to get them what they asked me to do. And that's why this bill stands where it's at. I just couldn't gut the whole bill for one or two home warranty companies. Everybody else was in support. I hope that answered your question. If not,
I think it does. And I apologize. I do have to go present at 9 o'clock, so I will be stepping out. It has nothing to do with your presentation.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you
so much for the question.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'll be curious to hear from some of the warranty companies, because I think one of the things we get challenged with in this building, and it's one of the beauties of having, a legislature that may be of one party and a governor of another, is that, we really do need to work together. And I think sometimes perfect can be the enemy of good. And I've discovered that with a lot of my own bills, because I may not be exactly where I want to be on my bill, but I'm in a place where the governor may sign the bill and then be able to really help the people who live in my district. So with that said, do we have any other questions from the committee? I don't see any other questions. So I thank you so much for being here today. I thank you so much for presenting. And we will welcome those that would like to come up and testify in support of Assembly Bill 231. And we look forward to seeing you in our physical locations. And then we will move to our phone lines.
Greg Esposito, representing the Nevada State Pipe Trades. Hope is a very powerful thing. And if you are on a fixed income, or if you are living check to check, one of these warranty policies is hope. And it's a gamble. You are hoping that your air conditioner doesn't break down. You are gambling the cost of the warranty, $1,000 a year, let's just say, for example. And, you know, you're putting the money on the table and you're hoping your air conditioner doesn't break down. But you're buying a policy that says if it does, someone's going to be there for you, okay? And I get that warranty companies' reason for existing is to make a profit, but they're gambling too. They're gambling that your air conditioner is not going to break down during the course of your warranty, and they're going to pocket that $1,000 and they're going to make a profit. So I appreciate that the warranty companies may be against this, but if you gamble and you lose, you pay. And it's not like if you can't repair it in 2 or 3 days, you lose your business license. No, you just got to pay for the hotel room until you can repair it. I'm in the air conditioning business. I understand supply chain issues, but I also understand a lot of these companies these days, you may not know this, are owned by big conglomerates. They're owned by national firms that go into jurisdictions and buy up multiple companies in order to control the market, set prices. You think you're getting fair bidding. You're bidding against, people are bidding against themselves. And so they have stock. They can repair these things. And if they can't, they lost. If you don't want to gamble, don't get in the market. I was given one of these warranties when I purchased my house. They did a terrible job. They had a dashboard to complain. It didn't work. I might wound up having to call in, and the person couldn't even communicate with me how to file an appeal. And so, consumer protection has been the jurisdiction of legislatures like this across the country, and I urge you to support this bill because this is people versus profit. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Senators. For the record, my name is Susie Martinez, Executive Secretary Treasurer of the Nevada State AFL-CIO. I have a story. One of my coworkers actually, she had gave her husband her kidney, and unfortunately he passed away. So she lived at home with her son and her dog. And the next summer, her air conditioning goes out. And, she's still recuperating from what she had gone through, right? But the guy, I remember she'd come in, she'd tell us at work, she's like, they're not coming, or they're going to come, but they're going to come like next week. Long story short, it took months. It took approximately 2 months. And this is in the summer where in Vegas, our heats go up 100 every day, right? And I was outraged. And this must have been maybe about 18 years ago when the supply chain, it wasn't an issue, right? Things weren't crazy like they are after COVID. And I couldn't understand, and I was really outraged. I'm like, how can that possibly be? You paid for that service, and you mean to tell me they're telling you that you have to wait several months to get your air conditioning fixed? She had to stay in hotels, she had to stay in other people's homes because she couldn't stay in her home. You guys all know, those of you who live in Vegas, it gets way too hot. So, this is unacceptable, and I think this is the one opportunity that we get to make things right. My sister, when I first started this position, she's like, Susie, my refrigerator broke. The guy's coming, and I'm like, oh, Lord, she had one of those home warranties. Sure enough, the guy tells her, you know what? Can't get you the part for 30 days. I'm like, so you mean to tell me you're paying for this warranty and you're not going to get your refrigerator fixed for 30 days? If you like to cook water, ice cream, all of your goods go to waste, right? Or you got to go get another refrigerator. I'm like, what is the point of us having these warranties when the goods, they're not delivering on their service, right? And I saw a commercial today, as a matter of fact, on one of the home warranties before I came here. I was watching the Today Show, and, they're talking about how wonderful these warranties, they have these celebrities, endorsing them, and I'm going, what a joke. Because at the end of the day, they should put a little disclaimer on there. It's going to take you about 30, 60, 90 days for us to fix your stuff. But you know what? They definitely want their payment delivered to them when you're supposed to make your payment for your warranty, but they will not deliver for several months later. It's an outrage. But I hope that you guys support this bill as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. And I think everyone in this building can agree 30, 60, 90 days is ludicrous. So thank you so much. And with that, begin when you're ready.
Cyrus Hojjati, Hojjjaty. I will echo the previous commentators. It's a good bill. Urban heat island effect matters too.
Okay. Thank you so much. Do we have anyone in Las Vegas? I don't see anyone at the table. Broadcast, we're going to move to you. Is there anyone on the phone lines who'd like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 231?
If you would like to testify in support of AB 231, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 225, please press star 6 to unmute. Again, caller with the last 3 digits of 225, please press star 6. Thank you. Please continue.
Hi, Catherine Ivanov. I don't know what was with the phone. I pressed star 6 3 times. Anyway, Catherine Ivanov, IVANOFF. I'm in support of the bill. Thank you.
Chair, you have no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you so much. We will welcome anyone to the table in our physical locations who would like to testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 231, and then we will move to the phone lines.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Paige Barnes with the Ferrado Company, here today on behalf of the National Home Service Contract Association. First, I want to thank the sponsor for her willingness to meet with us. We've had several conversations with her dating back to the beginning of February. Unfortunately, we sit here today in opposition to the bill. While we've provided 2 different amendments, neither has been accepted, and the amendments adopted and presented today do not address our concerns. The definitive and arbitrary timelines set in AB 231 are unrealistic for industry compliance. First, the burden is placed upon the service contract provider who doesn't have control of the local contractors with which they contract to complete repairs. Additionally, there are workforce shortages and supply chain delays outside of the provider's control, especially in the summer months in Southern Nevada. Instead, our recommendation would be to require repairs to commence within 24 hours for covered goods that are essential to the residents' health and safety. Then, if the work cannot be completed within 3 calendar days, the provider must submit a report and timely updates to the Commissioner on Insurance and the policyholder. This additional accountability measure would ensure that work be completed as soon as possible. Additionally, the hotel accommodation requirements in AB 231 are not suitable for every customer. Requiring these accommodations in all service contracts will inflate prices across the board. Instead, we suggest requiring providers to offer plans with hotel accommodations as an option. This would give customers choice and flexibility based upon their needs and their price range. We understand the sponsor's concern and have proven to be a willing partner in addressing the industry's bad actors. We collaborated with Senator Spearman last session on SB 436, which passed both houses unanimously and the governor signed. That bill, which came out of this committee, requires service contract providers to submit an annual report to the Commissioner on Insurance, who then shares that information with the Joint Interim Commerce and Labor Committee. Additionally, we've been working closely with the Division of Insurance since last legislative session on regulations that increase the Commissioner's authority and the service contract provider's accountability. Our recommendations provide timely response to customers and expand the contract options to meet residents' needs. We understand the goals and the intent of this legislation. However, the bill as presented today will not achieve the desired outcomes. We've submitted a letter further outlining our concerns and the recommended solutions. Thank you all so much for your time.
Good morning, Chair Pizzina, members of the Commerce and Labor Committee. My name is Jesse Wadhams with the law firm of Black & Wadhams on behalf of the Service Contract Industry Council. Unfortunately, we are also opposed to AB 231 as written. Over the course of time, NRS 690C, the service contract chapter, has sort of become an amalgamation of a lot of different products, from things that you buy, say, at your TV retail store, to attached to things like washers, dryers, heaters, and furnaces. And over the course of time, that chapter has become a lot of things. So you'll find a joint letter from Ms. Barnes' client and my client that explains a lot of our opposition and some of the concepts we would offer in solution. with regard to the timelines, the effort, the making the repairs, obviously, I will not reiterate, but I will just kind of say the supply chain issues are still an issue. Workforce issues are an issue. These timelines are at this point unrealistic, and we do think the amendment offered by our colleagues would help bring us to neutral. Additionally, the Division of Insurance has robust oversight and a robust regulatory process where a lot of these can be addressed. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and Committee. My name is Sabrina Schnur, Sabrina, Schnur, and I am here on behalf of the American Property Casualty Insurance Association. APCIA would just like to echo Mr. Wadhams and Ms. Barnes. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Alfredo Alonso today, behalf of Fidelity Home Warranty, and just a couple of things that hasn't been said here. These are not emergency insurance policies. These are clearly not marketed that way. I think that's very important because I can tell you from my personal experience just recently calling someone out to fix our air conditioner took 2.5 weeks just to get them out. So it is a problem. It's a problem with the folks that we attempt to hire to do this work. It's extremely difficult to find quality contractors that you can contract with, and then ultimately enough of them. So I think that's an important part of this. This is completely out of our purview in terms of once that contractor is called, do they show up? Do they do the work properly? Again, we'd like to have everybody that we hire to do the work the first time correctly and quickly, but that's not a guarantee either. So I think that we are opposed to the bill as written. We'd like to continue working with the Assembly member and find some common ground. I think there has to be, but I think that until we can fix this contractor shortage and we can guarantee that side of it is perfected, I think it's very, very difficult to go to these, anything under a week to me seems completely unrealistic in terms of getting people out there and get it fixed, just from my personal experience. Thank you.
All right, not seeing anyone else in our physical locations, we are going to move to the phone lines broadcast. Is there anyone on the phones who'd like to testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 231?
If you would like to testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 231, please press star 9 now. Chair, you have no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you so much. While we are with you broadcast, is there anyone who'd like to testify in neutral on Assembly Bill 231?
If you would like to testify neutral on AB 231, please press star 9. Chair, you have no callers neutral at this time.
Thank you so much. And with that, we will move into neutral here in the room. And it wouldn't be a day if we didn't get to see Adam Plain. So welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Adam Plain, Plain, with the Nevada Division of Insurance. The division is neutral on Assembly Bill 231 as a matter of policy. We did submit written testimony. I'm not sure if it's up in Nellis yet, providing a bit of background. The division, as mentioned previously, does regulate the service contract industry under Chapter 690C. To this specific topic in the bill, we do have a regulation, NAC 690C.110, that was adopted in 2018 and amended or revised in 2022 that deals with service contracts related to goods that are essential to the health and safety of a contract holder. As Ms. Barnes suggested for her language for a proposed amendment regarding repairs commencing within 24 hours and being completed within 3 calendar days, that is essentially what our existing regulation states. Additionally, if the repairs cannot be completed within that 3-day period, insurers are required to notify us of those situations. They are required to send notification both to the division and to the consumers. Fortunately, unfortunately, depending on your point of view, because the regulation is adopted pursuant to NRS 690Z.C.300, which is the general authority to adopt regulations for service contracts. There's no specific enforcement mechanism for 690Z110, the regulation. So as an example, in calendar year 2024, the division received 8,539 initial reports stemming from that regulation at NAC 690C.110. But other than receiving reports and updates, the division really cannot take specific action on any one of those. As mentioned in the Fox 5 news article, if a consumer has an issue with their service contract, they're always encouraged to contact us. Our consumer services folks can help adjudicate that for them. But in this specific case, there's no explicit authority. They'd be happy to take questions.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Plain? I don't. Oh, okay, Senator Steinbeck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do you believe that if you had that authority, you could help work through more of these issues?
Senator Steinbeck, for the record, Adam Plain, Nevada Division of Insurance. That's a great question. It's a little bit of a tricky answer, only because, as was mentioned in, I think, some of the other testimony, many of the home warranty service contract providers don't have the repair technicians and the parts in-house, right? They often rely on local contractors, whether it be like the local HVAC person in Reno or Las Vegas. It would give us a greater ability to enforce the provisions that exist, but we also have to be cognizant of the fact that, as has been testified to, right, there are limitations to what can happen, right? I kind of view it like health insurance, because people understand health insurance a little bit more. You have your health insurance, that doesn't necessarily mean you can get in to see the primary care physician right away, because your network may be impacted. Unfortunately, in the health insurance realm, we have emergency rooms who can always see you in an emergency. We don't have emergency HVAC repair systems, essentially. I don't know if that was a direct enough answer.
No, that's a good answer. Thank you.
All right. I don't see any further questions for you, so we thank you so much for always being here. I don't believe that is online at the moment, but we will look forward to reading that shortly in Nellis. Thank you so much. And I don't see anyone else coming forward in neutral. No one was on the phone. So, Assembly Member, we'd love to welcome you back up if you have any closing comments. And thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Fazina, and members of committee. Again, Linda Hunt for the record. I urge your support for AB 231, which aims to protect consumers by ensuring they receive critical services, especially during life-threatening weather conditions. I'm committed to work with stakeholders to see solutions and with continued discussions. Just to reiterate, I work tirelessly to try to get this bill to where it will work for the people of Nevada. And with this that is being presented, I think that will work for the people of Nevada, because it come a point in time where, it's always excuses as to why supply demand. We don't have the employees. If you own a business, you have to supply what you say that business is going to supply. If you own a business, you have to have the workers that's going to be able to do the work that you hired them to do. And that's my point, and that's the point of the constituents and the people that I have spoken with. It's like, excuse after excuse is always an excuse as to how not to take care of the consumer. So with that, Madam Chair and the committee, I thank you so much, and I urge you guys to support AB 231. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Assembly Member, and thank you for saying you'll continue to work with stakeholders. With deadlines fast approaching, be back in touch with us sooner than later and let us know how those conversations go. We thank you so much for being here today. And with that, we will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 231, and we are going to move back in time to Assembly Bill 44, which prohibits manipulating the price of an essential good or service in this state. We'll welcome the Attorney General and his phenomenal team to the table.
Good morning, Madam. Pardon me. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Aaron Ford, and I am your Attorney General. Honored and delighted to be here today to present to you Assembly Bill 44. To my right is my colleague, my Chief of my Consumer Protection Bureau, Mark Kruger, who will assist me in presenting the bill. Again, I'm Aaron Ford, A-A-R-O-N, last name F-O-R-D, and I've said many times before in this building that my administration, as Attorney General, is driven by 5 core values. We call those the 5 C's: constitutional rights, criminal justice and reform, client services and community engagement, and the 5th, for our purposes today, consumer protection. AB 44 falls within the expansive efforts that my office performs in the consumer protection arena. This work requires constant monitoring and attention due to shifting issues facing consumers today. The need for this piece of legislation stems from the fact that more residents more than residents of any other state, Nevadans struggle to afford essential goods due to factors that include our consistently high unemployment rate, the current number of Medicaid recipients, and the potential cuts to Medicaid and other social safety net programs at the federal level. For example, Nevada has the unfortunate distinction of having the worst unemployment rate in the nation. In December of 2024, Nevada's unemployment rate was 5.7% for the 3rd consecutive month, the highest unemployment rate in Nevada since September of 2021. At the end of 2024, 1 out of every 4 constituents, nearly 788,000 Nevadans, were enrolled in the state's Medicaid program. This statistic is even more troubling based on the information you've received that Nevada could be at risk of losing $1.9 billion in federal Medicaid funding if Congress follows through with planned reductions to Medicaid spending, putting both the health and financial livelihoods of so many Nevadans at risk. As your Attorney General, I've witnessed that during difficult times, cheaters and scammers will use unfair practices to take advantage of the tough economic circumstances that Nevadans are experiencing. Remember the housing crash and the proliferation of mortgage fraud that ensued? My office is the one that's investigated and prosecuted those types of unfair practices. And this bill would fill current loopholes in statutes that have proven insufficient to stop these practices from occurring. Consider, if you will, the rancher in Lyon County who depends on the fair price of grain and gas to operate his small farming business. Or the parents in Reno who are both working multiple jobs to simply afford the rising costs of meat and bread at the grocery store just to feed their family. Or the single mother in North Las Vegas who's being forced to make a decision between the rising costs of her own medications and the increases in her rent. No matter where you live in Nevada, we all share the same vulnerabilities. And I want to ensure, as your Attorney General, that these consumers are protected in the marketplace. In that regard, let me applaud the efforts of Senator Pezzina and Senator Scheibel in demanding answers regarding the real estate buying practices, for example, of both rental companies and corporate home buyers. My office wholeheartedly agrees with you that one hedge fund owning 3,000 homes in Southern Nevada or one company buying up 250 homes in one day reeks of an anti-competitive behavior. The fact that a Nevadan earning $25 an hour would still not earn enough to afford nearly 2/3 of the housing rentals in this state is inherently unfair. If you couple those statistics with the rising cost of all types of goods and services, it is easy to see why so many Nevadans are struggling to afford the essential goods that are necessary for care for themselves and their families. The cost of essential goods such as food, clothing, gasoline, medicine, housing utilities, ground transportation, and phone and internet access should not be a barrier to Nevadans accessing these goods. As well, increased cost of doing businesses cannot be used as a smokescreen for businesses to fraudulently and deceptively. Two key words I want you to hone in on today, because you will hear opposition that forgets to mention the words fraudulent and deceptive. This bill addresses fraudulent and deceptive manipulation of the market by increasing prices to the detriment of Nevadans. This bill, I will repeat, addresses fraudulent and deceptive manipulation of the market by increasing prices to the detriment of Nevadans. Let me be clear on that last point. This bill does not prohibit companies from setting prices in a manner that reflects the basic forces of supply and demand. Let me say it again, because someone will come up here and say just the opposite. This bill does not prohibit companies from setting prices in a manner that reflects the basic forces of supply and demand, which have been defined by federal courts and will be explained later in this presentation. Let me also take the opportunity to dispel the notion that this bill is meant to, quote, punish business, unquote. Let's put that nonsense to rest as well. Increased costs to businesses due to inflation, due to supply chain disruptions, or rising operating costs are all basic forces of supply and demand. This bill does not stop a company from responding to increased costs due to inflation, to supply chain disruptions, or rising operation costs, because they are basic forces of supply and demand. This bill does not prohibit those practices. It does not cripple small business owners who are good corporate citizens and work hard to earn a living themselves. It does not kill competition. To the contrary, the Unfair Trade Practices Act seeks to promote fair competition in a robust economy. Fair competition, not unfair, not deceptive, not manipulative, but fair competition and a robust economy, which in turn allows consumers to have more choices and lower prices in the long term. Let me also be clear, this is not a price gouging bill. That's different. This is a price fixing bill. And we will make that distinction clear in just a second. It is not a price gouging bill. We passed and sponsored and passed a price gouging bill during the last legislative session that many of the people who are going to come up and testify against this bill testified against that bill as well. The price gouging bill we passed a couple of sessions ago dealt with raising prices during states of emergency. That's price gouging. This is price fixing that, again, we will define in just a second. What this bill does is also prohibit those who would knowingly manipulate the market through fraudulent and deceptive means to increase prices of essential goods beyond the threshold set in legislation, ensuring the already high cost of essential goods and services are now pushed even further out of reach for illicit gains. This bill addresses price fixing and provides a mechanism for my Consumer Protection Bureau to use the Unfair Trade Practices Act to investigate and prosecute those bad actors who would further prey on Nevadans. It allows investigations into those businesses who would attempt to further injure competition and consumers through deceptive, there's that key word again, deceptive and fraudulent means to manipulate the price of necessities beyond those basic forces of supply and demand. Unfair trade hurts honest businesses fighting for their survival in this economy. It is enough that we have to navigate these difficult times that are having to compete with those businesses who are cheating, who are unfairly trying to manipulate the market. This is a bill to promote fair competition and prevent consumers from further being taken advantage of by those who would knowingly do so through fraud and deception. Let me have the committee note that my office worked diligently with stakeholders on this bill while in the Assembly, even offered them an opportunity to present to me amendments that they would find acceptable. I don't recall any of them doing so. Not one. The door was open. No one walked through it. It passed the Assembly. It is sitting before you now with the opportunity to again protect consumers. And the first reprint of the bill that you see is the product of multiple meetings nonetheless with various stakeholders in the business community. Chair Pezzina, I will turn the presentation over to Mark Kruger to walk through the substantive points of Assembly Bill 44, and then we will stand ready for questions. Thank you so much.
Good morning. Mark Kruger, Chief Deputy Attorney General, for the record. I'm going to walk you quickly through the bill and just hit some of the highlights. And then, as Attorney General Ford said, we can answer any questions. What this bill does is exactly what was described by Attorney General Ford, is prohibit the manipulation of the price of essential goods and services in this state. Now, I'm going to go a little bit backwards because it's a little bit easier to do that. To find out what an essential good or service is, we go to the paragraph 5 of the bill, where it defines essential goods or services as any kind of good or service that's needed on a daily or recurring basis for the livelihood of a person. And it has to fall within one of these categories. The categories are directly from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, and what the Bureau of Economic Analysis does every year is identify goods and services sold within the state of Nevada. And that's, if you go back to the front, to the manipulation part, you'll see that the SAPCE3, which was a document that was submitted, and it looks somewhat like this, an Excel chart with some highlighted colors. Those highlighted colors are what we've identified as essential goods and services, those categories. And so if you look at that, what we did is take a look back period of 5 years. So you go back 5 years, it posts every year, and it lags 1 year behind. And this is specific goods and services sold in the state of Nevada. And that's identified by this particular SAPCE for the state of Nevada, so that you understand it's not any goods or services sold in the country, but rather specific to Nevada. And then you just figure out the average of the 5-year look-back period, and then that's the actual amount that would be, if you were to manipulate the market to increase that price, that would actually trigger the statutory prohibition. So going back to the front again, when we're talking about manipulation, the case law has defined manipulation as any kind of conduct, artificial pricing, creation of an artificial price planned action, any kind of stimulus, artificial stimulus applied to the market, or any kind of forces which distort those prices in the market. And when those artificial or manipulation of the market occur, that's when you have a trigger in the legislation, which is consistent with case law. What case law does is it says, hey, we recognize that there are basic forces of supply and demand. And so we've incorporated that into the provision of the bill to recognize exactly what Attorney General Ford was describing and what we saw being discussed in this prior bill with home warranties, that there is basic forces of supply and demand that will cause prices to go up. And we incorporate that so that it's excluded from being captured by the provision of the manipulation in this section of the bill. The only other thing I wanted to highlight as we go through is that there is an exception to certain industry that's already regulated. The prices of their goods and services are regulated. I'm going to give you an example of that. Energy is regulated currently by the Public Utilities Commission of Nevada. So they're excluded as long as they're still being regulated by another agency. Then there's a couple other exceptions, one of those being the resort hotel, which is also defined in the statute. Resort hotels, what they end up doing is selling like a grocery store type food, which would otherwise be captured, so that's why they're excluded out. What we're looking at is food that's, grocery store type food and not fast food or something like that. And then the only other exception is the ride sharing that companies under Chapter 706A. So with that, I've concluded my review of the bill and am ready for questions.
All right. Thank you so much for the presentation. It's always wonderful having you in here. With that, we're going to start with Senator Steinbeck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for presenting this bill. I would like it if you could give us some specific examples of times where we've had price fixing in some of these categories that you would have utilized this bill to address.
Thank you for the question. I will be frank and say that what initiated this concept was allegations that we received and heard about relative to housing prices, rental prices in Southern Nevada, where companies were using algorithms to artificially inflate the price of housing in Southern Nevada. There are several jurisdictions throughout the country that are investigating companies that have been, some in instances, found to actually have manipulated the pricing of housing utilizing these types of algorithms. And so that was the impetus behind it. But the conversation has expanded because we have seen and have received complaints and concerns about the unlawful manipulation of other essential goods and services that led to us drafting this bill. I want to be clear about something as well, Senator Steinbach. Our law already has a provision for that outlaws price fixing, generally speaking. Just as there's a general law against abuse, there's a general law against price fixing. But just as there is a more specific law of elder abuse, we want a more specific law that deals with price fixing in essential goods and services, so that we can better hone in on these issues, utilize this bill as a way to address what we're hearing is happening in the market from our consumers.
Follow-up? Thank you. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Just for instance, in here, though, we have like telecommunications services, internet, and I know those are extremely competitive markets in which the different companies are always trying to give lower prices to bring customers in. But that's why I was wondering if we had any issues within those categories or anything that you could bring up along those lines.
Mark Kruger for the record, and Chair Pezina through you to Senator Steinbach.
You can go direct, and thank you.
Thank you. Senator Steinbach, we have had several different types of investigations, some of them confidential and some of them non-confidential, and I'll give you some examples of non-confidential. One is an actual investigation and litigation into generic drugs price fixing. So that, again, is price fixing and not zeroed in on manipulation of the market. Regarding your specific question about the telecommunications services, we don't have any particular investigation that isn't necessarily confidential at this time. But what we were trying to do is capture all of those areas that would be essential to someone's livelihood. And those types of areas include, we believe, internet, because it's just become an everyday need for people to do their jobs, to get jobs, to live, essentially. And so that's why we captured that category, as well as some of these other categories. But we were very specific about those categories that we believe are essential and not categories that would be outside of that area.
Aaron Ford for the record. If I could just follow up real quickly to say, separate and apart from a discussion of price fixing, I want to make it clear that the conversation around telecommunications is not unique in the context of what our office does. In fact, we settled a case, and a antitrust case, we were looking at relative to the merger of two large telecommunications companies, and looked at the impact it was going to have on consumers, because they both had low price level subsidiaries, for example, that were present in underserved neighborhoods. And so ensuring that we have fair competition so that we can have choice, and so that the prices can be sustainable and affordable to other individuals is something that we do across the board in our office. And so certainly when we talk about price fixing in the context of ensuring that consumers have essential goods available to them, telecommunications would fall within that particular conversation as well.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Senator Daley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just trying to understand, so when you mentioned the case law on what is the forces of, what do we got here? Let me go back to it. Reflect the basic forces of supply and demand. You said that's defined, or is it only defined in case law?
Mark Kruger for the record, Senator Daley. The case law, and there's extensive cases that do cite to the cases that identified the language forces other than supply and demand. The case law talks about manipulation, and it talks about how characters or actors in the market manipulate the market, but it recognizes that there's an exception for basic forces of supply and demand. Basic force of supply and demand is kind of a common sense approach adopted by the courts to say, whatever particular market you're looking at, if there is a supply chain issue, if there is some other thing that is a force on the supply and demand that would cause the business owner to have to raise prices because they're paying more for the goods or services, that would be basic forces of supply and demand. And we see examples of it. I think Chair Pazina had said in her business in the prior bill testimony that she sees supply demand issues that would cause prices to raise. So depending on what market you're in, it would be a different type of basic forces. So if you're in building and wood goes up, for example, because it's harder to get, or there's tariffs, or there's other factors that are legitimate factors, it causes you to raise your price of your building because of the wood that you're getting to supply, that would be a basic force of supply and demand that would be covered by the language in the bill, the exception.
So the answer to my question is it's not defined other than in case law, and then it's defined in reference to specific issues within that case. Are there conflicts between courts and various things on what the basic forces of supply and demand are or are not? Because it's almost a difference. You're saying, well, these are the basic forces of supply and demand, and these are the other things that constitute manipulation. So are those two things defined, or is it just in the case law specific to each individual case that's brought up?
Mark Kruger for the record, and Senator Daley, what changes in the case law is the type of manipulation. And that's what this bill is trying to capture, is anything that would manipulate the market. So the cases define manipulation broadly, and they define them in a lot of different ways because we're going to see a lot of different factors that go into manipulation. What is consistent is that terminology of basic forces of supply and demand. That is always going to be something that isn't part of the manipulation.
Okay. And then we spent a lot of time, and we had the one question from Senator Steinbeck on, you're trying to say, hey, well, these are examples of fixing, price fixing. My understanding of it, and tell me if I'm wrong, that an individual that owns an apartment complex can use an algorithm to say, based on all the market forces, this and that, I want to get the highest profit I can, and he sets his prices for his facility at what he thinks the market will bear. That would not be, in my mind, price fixing. That would be just doing an analysis of the market and setting the price that I'm going to charge. Price fixing would be if he manipulated or colluded with another vendor to say, hey, together we should agree that we won't charge less than this, et cetera, et cetera. And that's part of your two-prong test here. So what are we talking about on the fixing? Takes more than one person. So I can still go out and set the market rate whatever I want. And if people don't buy my goods and services, I may have overpriced it.
Mark Kruger for the record. So again, this bill is not about price fixing. It's about price manipulation. And the manipulation can be done by one person if you have enough of ability to, through deceptive and fraudulent means, which is how it adopts the violations of the Deceptive Trade Practice Act, so that in response to the stakeholders, we made it very clear so that everybody knows what the deceptive and fraudulent conduct could be. When you do that, it can be alone or in concert with somebody else to manipulate the market through that fraudulent and deceptive means beyond basic forces of supply and demand and in one of these essential good categories, then you are violating the Unfair Trade Practices Act for manipulation, not necessarily price fixing. You could also be violating for price fixing if you're acting with another person to collude to set prices at a certain amount. So two nuanced issues, but slightly different.
Well, and we seem to use those terms interchangeably. I know the Attorney General did mention price fixing. So I'm an individual. I have 25% of the apartment complexes or whatever in a particular market. What is the manipulative part of me using an algorithm to set the prices based on a variety of different factors?
Well, with any, Mark Kruger for the record, with any hypothetical, we have to add some facts here because you're basically saying, I'm owner of a complex, I'm trying to use an algorithm to set prices. So now, are you doing it deceptively or fraudulently in order to increase the prices over a specific amount set in the statute? If you are, then you're falling in with a manipulation, which, like I said, can also incorporate the price fixing because you're fixing those prices at a higher rate through a deceptive or fraudulent conduct. It's definitely the incorporation of your deceptive and fraudulent conduct. So if you're saying, I'm just going to hypothetically pull this, out of the thin air here. Let's say you're in your complex, you're saying, I have to set the rent price at, 300 times the amount that you would have normally set it at because you're telling through a deceptive conduct that there was some other factor other than forces of supply and demand. So you're basically deceiving the public about setting that price and raising it that much to be able to basically pocket the extra money. That would be an example of how you're doing it through the use of the algorithm.
And I'm just listening to the words you're telling me. You're saying that if I set a price above that's what's set in statute, are rents set in statute anywhere?
No, again, Mark Kruger for the record. You can set the price as high as you want as long as you're doing it honestly. If you're doing it through deceptive and fraudulent means, that's when you're going to start having a problem.
I'm an individual. I'm not colluding or talking to anybody else. And I'm setting the price I think I can get. And even if I raise it up too high, no one's going to rent it. There's other people, there's other places. And if there aren't, that's a force of supply and demand. It's like, get what the market will bear. And it may have gone up more than your 5% here or whatever, because there's a shortage, whatever it might be. Is that deceptive, manipulative? Wouldn't it still just be the forces of market if I'm setting it and not colluding with anybody and I go above your 5%?
Aaron Ford for the record. The key import is, are you doing it in a deceptive way? Is there anything deceptive about what you're doing, right? And that actually is intended to and does lead to the increase of the rental that you're trying to market to the consumers, right? We're talking about manipulation. This is a bill about price fixing. I mean, my guy on my right speaks a lot more nuanced relative to the way he's going to argue it in court. But this is a price fixing bill that focuses on the manipulation component of price fixing. So that's too weedy, I think. And so at the end of the day, what we're talking about here is ensuring that the individuals who are engaging in I'm trying to provide a good or a service that is essential for consumers, doesn't engage in deceptive conduct that is intended to and does raise the price of an essential good, and because that's going to be called manipulation if it is done in a way that is outside of the normal forces of supply and demand.
And thank you. Final question, Madam Chair. And so I think I got what I was looking for. So on all the essential things you list on number 5, the only one I just trying to get, I think I understand some of the other stuff. The household utilities are accepted if they're covered by the PUC. We talked about housing. I don't know how you find that with all of the variables in the market there, apartment complexes, owners, rentals, individual housing. So there's a lot of factors there. But ground transportation, Uber and the rest of those seem to be excluded. Taxis are regulated. So what are we talking about in ground transportation?
Okay, and Mark Kruger for the record. Senator Daly, if you don't mind, I'm going to go back to your other example that you gave, where you're an individual, you're raising prices, you're very transparent about it. There is no fraudulent or deceptive conduct in raising the prices. You want to raise it 500% of what you think is there. You don't violate this legislation. You are perfectly willing, able, and capable of raising prices as long as it's done without that fraudulent, deceptive conduct to then fix prices to raise them. If you want to fix your prices at a higher rate without any kind of deceptive conduct, then the bill does not prohibit that. So you can raise it however much you want. And to your point, if you do that, that's most likely you're going to get less renters. But if you're trying to do it through a manipulative conduct to actually bring in renters and still raise the prices above that amount, then you get into that part where you're manipulating the market. Okay, to answer your other question, so ground transportation, and we've seen different legislation over the years about whether or not certain local agencies are going to regulate different industries. And sometimes, like we saw at one point in time several years back, a proposal to remove regulation and make energy free market. So while most of the transportation companies are covered or exempted from the legislation because their prices are set by in this case, the Transportation Authority, then those would be exempted. But if they were to be non-regulated or deregulated, then they would fall within this conduct or within this bill if their conduct was then again manipulating the market.
So we're not talking about auto sales or that type of stuff?
No, we're talking about transportation that is necessary for an individual. Remember, it goes back to needs, essential needs. So what is necessary for your livelihood would generally be, having the ability to take a cab or take some sort of a bus to your work, et cetera.
And the reason I asked about ground transportation in that context was, if you were talking about car sales, I mean, there's a variety of external factors there. You have the factory incentives, you have Ford advertising right now says, hey, you can get the employee discount. Well, when that ends, it may cause the prices to go up more than the 5% we're talking about. Of course, then you have to have those two-pronged factors back in the beginning section. But I just wanted to make sure that's not what we were talking about.
Thank you so much. Did we have Senator Flores?
Thank you for the presentation. I know I'm trying to avoid the scenario where we go through 1,000 different hypotheticals because I get that. I think maybe I'll just ask this to avoid that exercise because we can be here all day. Businesses, right? And I'm going through it now. I consider myself a small business in the big scope of law firms here in Nevada. We're tiny in comparison to many other firms. And I know often in the competitive spirit that we live in this country, we're very strategic about how we price things, how we go after certain markets. Oftentimes, you're looking at the largest competitors, and you're setting up a business plan on how to start chipping away at some of what their market share is, right? And at times, maybe you're working with other smaller businesses, and you start strategically saying, well, here's the folk that have the big market share. Strategically, us 4 or 5 small businesses can get together, and if we implement this strategy, I think we could really start challenging the big market shareholders. I'm just trying to understand at what point we start looking at business strategies as manipulation, where it's inherently a fight between business fighting business. And it has more to do with business versus business than it has to do with the consumer side of it or the actual Nevadan. So I'm just curious to know, and maybe if you could create a hypothetical where maybe you've already seen it in kind of preparing for the presentation today, where you see those different business models kind of playing in the space, but it's not manipulation, because I think that would give a lot of people a little bit more ease to realize that having the competitive spirit, which is what capitalism is and what this country is built on, is not what's going to be utilized to weaponize here, right? And I think that would be helpful for me. I'm just trying to wrap my head around that.
So Mark Kruger, for the record, Senator Flores, it's a good question, and the best way I could answer it is saying the Unfair Trade Practices Act, which is Chapter 598A, where we're putting this manipulation language, promotes competition. And so we're not looking to go after the type of conduct that you described, so long as it doesn't go into the deceptive or fraudulent conduct to achieve the goals that these businesses, in working together to try to promote competition, are doing. So when it passes that legitimacy, honesty, transparency, and it goes into conduct that's deceptive and fraudulent, and what do we know is deceptive and fraudulent? We can look right to the Deceptive Trade Practices Act. Any of the violations within that act would meet that element of being deceptive and fraudulent.
And Madam Chair, if I may have a follow-up. I think the other thing also, pursuing a case, to really prosecute a case like this, is probably going to be incredibly difficult. And I want to make that clear, right? It's not going to be easy for us to just start going after businesses, because I fear that that's where the other side of the argument may go. But if you really wanted to prosecute a case like this, I mean, you have to have some blatant acts where it's been abundantly clear that you even have something to really hang your arguments on, or otherwise you wouldn't even entertain it, correct?
Mark Kruger for the record. Senator Flores, you're absolutely correct. Unfair trade practices, also known as antitrust, is one of the most complex areas of law. In fact, most of the time when I'm speaking with other attorneys and I bring up antitrust, I can see their eyes kind of glaze over and the conversation kind of ends at that point in time. So you're absolutely correct. Any of these investigations are extremely complex. It will require a lot of discovery to find out and determine what the evidence is that meet the elements of the violation of any act.
Aaron Ford for the record. I just want to offer a quick example. You'd asked for a hypo. I'm going to offer two. The example you've given of law firms, I think you mentioned law firm as your example.
And I just did law firm because that's the only area that I understand.
Right. So in the context about what you're speaking, you're likely looking to not increase the cost to compete against the big guys. You're looking to decrease the cost to ensure that consumers have more choice in that regard, right? And so what we're looking here, the statute says that it has to be intended to and does cause the price of essential good and service to increase in any manner, right? So the competition you've just described wouldn't even be on our radar because it's not increasing the price of a good or service. You follow me so far? Okay. Number two, but here's what would happen if you all did decide that you're going to get together as 5 folks and increase the price, beyond the normal laws of supply and demand. You absolutely would fall within at least you would come within our radar, because then we would ask, are you knowingly engaging in deceptive trade practices? A deceptive trade, a deceptive practice that is intended to and does in fact increase. And if what you're doing is being deceptive in the context of your conversation, I won't use the word collusion in this regard, but in your conversation with other businesses to raise that price, it absolutely could lead to, and if it fills the other components of the bill, obviously looking over the last 5 years and see if this is increasing, so we have those elements you have to meet, absolutely could. Let me give you an example of what we're seeing right now. Eggs. The price of eggs. You've heard a lot about the price of eggs. And we know that the price of eggs went up a lot because of bird flu, right? And that's what caused the price to go up. It wasn't because, folks who have chicken farms were saying, let's get together and charge eggs at 400 times more than what it normally would be charged, because we actually got the market on that and we can do that. And that I think, that's a good point too. That I think is an example of how the normal forces of supply and demand cause the price of eggs to go up in a way that would not be considered manipulation of the price of an essential good. And by the way, I've been corrected. Legal services are not essential goods or essential services anyway, so it wouldn't even fit. But just pointing that out. But on the eggs, like I said, back to the eggs component, that's a prime example of where prices have increased dramatically because of the normal forces of supply and demand in a way that has not been manipulative, deceptive, or intended to increase the price of essential goods and services in a way that's going to fall within the purview of this particular action.
All right. So what I took from that is that someone can manipulate legal services. All right. I think we have Senator Ellison and then Senator Scheibel. Okay.
Thank you for presenting the bill. I don't see anything in this bill you couldn't do already as an attorney general at all. But when I did look and see all the changes that was in the bill and delete, but you know, I've seen so many bills up here this year on going after rental companies, bigger rental companies like these big apartment complexes, right, one after the other. But you're not going back to look to find out why they're having to increase. Insurance, city and county water and sewer, property taxes, utility costs that's going out of the thing. But you start adding this stuff up, they either have to lower the rent or try to push it off onto the consumer. Nobody wants that. But you look back and see what the property rates are going to on ad valorem tax, it's just going massively out of the roof. The city and county is going to have to push the water and sewer rates up because of the cost of the utilities. And you can go back two and see these. And we need to start also looking at these. I mean, the utility rates, they could do whatever they want. You never hear that. The insurance rate, we have no control over that. I mean, they just keep going up and up and up and up, and actually probably into the 30s to 40% in some areas. That's how bad the insurance companies has went up. So I think that this bill, you can actually do everything in this bill to your position right now. And I might be wrong. If I am, I apologize. But, you know, there's reasons why people have to push increases up, and it's because of these issues.
Aaron Ford, for the record, a couple points. First of which, I don't disagree. I said earlier that we have a general price fixing statute that would apply, just like you got general abuse laws that apply in general abuse cases. But this legislature has seen fit to ensure that specific activities have specific statutes that address them. And in this instance, we want to focus in on essential goods and services as things that are particularly of interest to the consumer. And so that's why we are asking for the additional opportunity to pursue that through this statute. So, you know, there's no disagreement in that regard. I don't know if you agree with me relative to the need for a specific statute to address these specific issues, but there is no disagreement about the overarching components of what price fixing what we're allowed to do in the price fixing arena here. Number one. Number two, look, I don't disagree that there may be normal forces of supply and demand that cause rent increases to go up. You just articulated some, right? And that would not fall within this bill. The question is, are there any components of what they're doing that are deceptive, that are intended to and are causing an increase? That would be manipulation. And there are indeed, I know for a fact, that there are indeed companies out there that are engaging in fraudulent and deceptive activities to I hate to use the word collude, but to collude with one another to artificially increase the pricing of essential goods and services, which is, again, one of the things that we're looking at to address here. Some of the stuff that, one of the areas that may not be addressed, frankly, is the use of AI and new technology. And this captures that type of conduct that may not otherwise be captured under the current statutes. And so this does, have some, some component of it that is new relative to what the statutes are.
And I agree. There's been bills in here that says that when you give a contract, you got to follow that contract. Don't start putting hundreds of pieces into it afterwards. And I thought that was a good bill. It addressed a lot of this stuff. So when you're in an apartment or whatever you do, everything should be in black and white right there, not afterwards. So I think that's an issue that could be brought up over and over and over. But I think they addressed it in that bill, and I can't remember where the bill came from the Senate or the Assembly. But I still think that a lot of these problems are coming from the utility companies, the cities, the waters, the ad valorem. We just got hit with all dirt on properties, anywhere $20,000 to $30,000 per rental. I mean, that's not a lot of money when you figure it out, but when you see that, you're in shock. So I still think that you have the right under your your position to look at these and go in and fix them without adding another bill, but I might be wrong. But thank you anyway.
Thank you so much. Senator Scheibel.
Thank you. And I'm sorry I missed the first part of the presentation, so I apologize if this has already been addressed. But I think like the rest of the committee, I've had people coming to meet with me on this and many other bills. And some of those people have expressed concerns that this is going to prevent Black Friday sales and Labor Day sales, and that by providing a lower cost that is outside of the normal supply and demand, that this would empower smaller businesses or, I don't know, somebody to complain about a Black Friday sale and allow you to take action against an outlet that is trying to actually provide a lower cost product. And so I'm hoping that you can address that concern.
And to follow up on the question, I think that also is with the changes triggered by the 5-year annual percentage, because then that lower price would be included in that 5-year annual percentage.
Aaron Ford for the record. Thank you so much, Senator Scheibel, for the question and Senator Pazina for the follow-up. The bill specifically says that we are looking to stop increases in prices. And that's what the manipulation is here. So this sale you're talking about wouldn't even fall within the purview of the bill, right? So again, this is part of the importance of the conversation because to the extent I've not heard anybody come to say to us they were worried about not being able to lower their prices, frankly. So the fact that they're coming to you and asking that question, is an interesting approach in that regard. But no, the bill specifically deals with manipulation of prices that is intended to and leads to an increase in pricing. That's what we're getting at in that regard. And there was another part, I think, of your question that I wanted to respond to, but
nope, that was it.
I got it. Okay, great.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you. And I think the concern was if they lowered the prices for a Labor Day sale or July 4th sale, Memorial Day, which is coming up, then they were concerned that because the prices were lower for a period of time, that would be included within that 5-year percentage. And then if they increased later, because the lower prices were included, that would cause the issue. I think that might have been where the question came from.
Aaron Ford for the record. And well, first off, that's why we use 5 years, because if you just look at 1 year, then I could see more of a concern there. But let's be clear, a Black Friday sale is a one-day sale. They're talking about lowering their prices for the whole year, and they're worried about that lower price being that which is, averaged into the 5-year period. I mean, some of these hypotheticals, I think, frankly, are intended to be extraordinary so that they can deflect from the actuality. This bill only addresses what happens in the context of folks who are deceptively engaging in conduct that manipulates and leads to an increase in pricing. And so the Black Friday sales, the Cyber Tuesday sales, I think that's what it is, right? Cyber Monday sales, whatever the case may be. Those things, to the extent that they are, 1 or 2 day sales, sure, they will play into the average for the year. But we're not contemplating, a year-long sale where they're not contemplating a year-long sale that's really going to have a negative impact on their ability to look at over the 5-year period and be able to respond in a way that they want to. And remember, they can raise their prices 1,000% if they want to. Period. Even if it is over even if it does run up against the 5-year calculation, they can increase their prices by 1,000%. This does not stop them from increasing their prices. What it stops them from doing is doing so in a fraudulent way that is intended to manipulate and does increase the prices. So I mean, that's a distinction that makes the big difference with a lot of the examples that they're providing here. Nothing stops these folks from raising their prices at any level. But if they do something that is deceptive and unlawful, then that is going to invoke the terms of this particular act. And then also, I'll let Mark chime in here. He has a comment about long-term market supplies.
Mark Kruger for the record. Yeah, and I just wanted to add that the long-term market supplies can actually work in a benefit if you think about if they're long-term and they impact the market for a year. Those increases will actually benefit these companies if you go back on a 5-year lookout. But again, that's why we used 5 years to kind of try to average out any kind of market increases through basic force of supply and demand so that it has a look back that's a longer period of time and kind of, I guess, makes it kind of averages of a longer period rather than 1 year, if that makes sense.
Do we have any other questions? We have one more from Senator Steinbeck, and then we'll move to testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for clarification, I see the bill, it does include transportation and includes food. Does that include food delivery services?
Mark Kruger for the record, Senator Steinbeck. It does not include the actual service. It would include food as purchased like from groceries, from a grocery store or something. But it would include the service to get it to your house, because the alternative is you can actually go to the grocery store and buy the food. So we're only talking about the essential good, the food.
Thank you.
Okay, not seeing any more questions. Thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you.
And we will have you take a step back from the table so that we can welcome testimony in support of Assembly Bill 44. We'll start in our physical locations and then we will move to the phone lines. All right, broadcast, do we have anyone on the phone lines who'd like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 44?
If you would like to testify in support of AB 44, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, you have no callers in support at this time.
Thank you so much. With that, we will welcome anyone who'd like to testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 44 to the tables. We'll start in our physical locations and then again move to the phones.
Good morning, Chair Pezina, members of the committee. For the record, Paul Morat with the Vegas Chamber. The Chamber is opposed to Assembly Bill 44 as introduced and as amended by the Assembly in reprint version 1. While the Chamber agrees with the intent to protect consumers, it does not agree with the premise and approach of Assembly Bill 44 as presented today to the committee. The Chamber believes that AB 44 as amended does not address the concerns that have been shared with the bill sponsored by the business community. We believe the amended AB 44 is even more concerning than the version that was introduced. The Chamber believes that AB 44 does not take into consideration the factors of supply and demand, which is a fundamental principle of our economy, as the committee knows. Specifically in Section 1, subsection F, which mentions price of an essential good or service in the calculations of 1 year period compared to 5 year period average, is troublesome in its approach and application if it becomes law. The Chamber thinks this section of the bill will result in businesses being fearful of making legitimate pricing adjustments, and as a result, they may not make pricing adjustments as one typically would see in the marketplace for the benefit of consumers. The Chamber believes and stems from that broad, vague, and discretionary standards definition of the bill would capture almost all aspects of Nevada's economy when applied to essential goods and services. This is demonstrated by the broad language that is found in Section 1, subsection G, subsection 5A. Essential good or services means any good or service which is needed on a daily or recurring basis for the livelihood of a person and which falls with one of the following categories. This basically means almost the entire Nevada economy. For this reason, the Chamber believes this bill does not take into actual and pragmatic application the principle of economics into account. That is why our members, who are the job creators and economic engine of the state, and your constituents, are concerned that they will be targeted with legal action if they make any price adjustments, which we believe the Chamber will hurt Nevada's consumers and families. Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the committee today.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Senate Committee on Commerce and Labor. My name is Brian Wachter. I'm the Senior Vice President of the Retail Association of Nevada. We, too, are opposed to AB 44. We believe that this changes the calculus on how retailers are going to be presenting pricing decisions in Nevada. I think to address the example that was provided about our worry about decreasing prices is when we put things on sale, there's actually two price changes, right? There's the change when we go down and we lower that cost of that good, milk, ice cream, berries, bananas, oatmeal. And then we have the return price, and that price goes back up. And what we are worried about is that the amount of times that we put a product on sale, whether it's Black Friday or whether it's, the 5 or 6 large sales that you already mentioned, or it's just the weekly ad. Those prices are constantly changing. We are trying to actually increase our supply and increase our demand for those customers to come into our stores, and so oftentimes we will lose money on a product as an encouragement to have someone come into the store. When we do that, when we put those prices down, that is going to be reflected in the average cost, whether it's over a year, 3 years, 5 years. It is going to start reflecting the cost in those changes. And so what we are concerned about, and I will say, is we don't think those members are actually out there manipulating and deceptively trading. In fact, the state of Nevada just received a $2 million fine from one of our members because we charged a lower price at the cash register than was on the shelf. And so we think that actions from the Attorney General's office are going to be costly. We have no reason to expect that this new trigger in law on the price increase over that 5-year average would stop those investigations or those questions into, are we being manipulative or deceptive? And so ironically, this bill is actually going to raise costs for Nevadans when the stated intent of the bill was to be able to help Nevadans afford everyday essential goods, groceries, and items. And so we feel that this is going to increase that price, and it is going to make it almost impossible for us to lower those prices, or at least have to account for the legal and the price increases into those prices every time we do that. And for that reason, we oppose the bill.
If you sit tight for just a second, I believe that Senator Scheibel has a question for you, Mr. Wachter.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Wachter, if you don't mind. Did I hear right that you're saying that the price on the shelf was $5.99? Someone took it to checkout, it came up at $3.99, and so they saved $2, and your member got fined for that?
Brian Wachter, for the record, to you and through you, Senator. Madam Chair, to Senator Scheibel. Yes, ma'am.
I'm clearly very surprised. Can you give us more information on, and I understand if you can't, but if you can give us more information on what the product was, where this happened, how the case played out. I'm just really surprised that.
I don't have the particular details. This came up during a conversation, obviously, we have with a very large group of retailers talking about actions from the Attorney General and things that we have to worry about and the things that go into those prices and those liabilities. We are supposed to match the cash register with the shelf price. That's what we're supposed to do. And it would be a deceptive trade practice the other way. It turns out it's a deceptive trade practice this way as well. And so we are worried that there could be actions, whether or not they are negative or have negative implications to consumers. They are something that our members are very worried about, and we do not view this as a hypothetical situation. I will see, ma'am, if I can get permission to share more details with you.
Thank you so much. We will be on the lookout for that. And thank you, Mr. Wachter. And with that, Mr. Abney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Trey Abney here today representing NFIB, Small Business Job Creators, in opposition to this bill. In the interest of time, I will associate myself with the two prior commenters. To Senator Ellison's point, we think that the AG has plenty of power and authority already to take care of these issues. And I don't say this often, but to Senator Daley's questions, those are very, those questions you ask, imagine you're not a senator who's been on this committee. Imagine you're not an attorney in the AG's office and you're a small business owner trying to figure all this out. It's very difficult and confusing, and so for that reason we oppose. Thank you.
Good morning, committee. My name is Nicole Flangas, NICOLEFLANGAS, here on behalf of the Reno Sparks Chamber of Commerce. Unfortunately, today we stand and oppose the bill. In relation to our Southern Chamber as well, we have those concerns mostly upon the basis of how inflation works, how free practices of trade work, and we don't think that this appropriately accounts for how prices will change over the market time. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take two more in Carson City, and then we're going to move to Las Vegas and then the phones.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Miranda Hoover with 3C House representing the Energy and Convenience Association of Nevada. We are in strong opposition to AB 44. The USC Marshall School of Business conducted a recent study on high gas prices in California, and the data demonstrates that government regulations, fees, and taxes are the cause of high fuel prices in California, not price fixing. We can appreciate the intent of this bill. However, the manipulation of price provision, while it mentions fraudulent or deceptive conduct, really will make normal everyday market activity legally suspect. It can be interpreted that raising prices for any reason could bring legal action and result in potential liability. That should not be the case. While under this language, cost increases in the business might be a defense, that is far from certain. For example, if costs go up faster in a given year than they have in the previous 5 years, every retailer selling motor fuel could be at risk of legal action and liability. Of course, we know this will happen as energy prices are volatile. Retailers are price takers on the vast majority of the price of motor fuel. But Both the bill puts those retailers at significant legal risk whenever there is a development in the Middle East or some other event that increases the cost of oil. I would also note that nothing in the language actually ties the price increase to the specific retailer's cost over the past 5 years. For example, a smaller retailer that often purchases at a higher price point would be at a built-in disadvantage on the generalized measure of prices over the past 5 years that the amendment language creates. The same will be true at different times based on whether a retailer is branded or unbranded and the terms of their supply contracts. Some retailers will be advantaged and others disadvantaged based on an overall 5-year average figure, especially if you take into account the last 5 years as an average, which includes the COVID pandemic. Furthermore, the simple allegation that a business is engaged in deceptive trade practices will cost the business thousands of dollars to fight. The bottom line is that this creates uncertainty for all businesses who would be affected by this change. States that have provisions of law...
Thank you so much. That's a little over 2 minutes, but we would ask that you provide all of your comments to the committee secretary so that we can ensure that we have all of that for the record.
Thank you, Chair.
And if someone just wants to say me too or ditto, that's okay too. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Pazina and members of the committee. My name is Jay Parmer, Jayparmer. I'm here representing the Association for Accessible Medicines, which is the National Trade Association for the generic and biosimilar pharmaceutical industry. AAM opposes individual state efforts to regulate wholly out-of-state pricing decisions. Similar legislation has resulted in litigation in several states. Such litigation is costly, time-consuming, and interferes with efforts to bring affordable generic and biosimilar medicines to Nevadans. I provided something to the committee that did not make it into Nellis, but it may be in your packet. If not, I'll make sure that I get back with the committee. In 2023, cost savings totaled $3.5 billion in Nevada. These savings benefit the Medicaid program, the Public Employees Benefit Program, and commercial payers, which includes small employers. For these reasons, we respectfully oppose AB 44. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to move to Las Vegas. Just as a heads up, we do have floor today and we have one more bill to hear. So the quicker we can make our statements, and if there's a ditto or a me too, that works really well. So Las Vegas and then to the phones. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Pazina and members of the committee. My name is Emily Osterberg, and I'm here representing the Henderson Chamber of Commerce and over 2,000 members, the majority of whom are small businesses, to express our opposition to AB 44. While we appreciate the intent behind this bill, we fear the ambiguous language could lead to unintended consequences for smaller businesses regarding liability for prices they do not control. Additionally, the vague definition of manipulating the price of an essential good or service could lead to arbitrary enforcement, especially during times of economic fluctuation and supply chain disruptions. For these reasons, we are opposed to AB 44. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Azim Jessa, and I serve as the chairperson of the Nevada Realtors Legislative Committee, and I'm here to respectfully urge you to vote against AB 44. By capping what is considered allowable rent increases, this de facto rent control measure prevents housing providers and developers from responding to real-time supply and demand. If enacted, this bill would immediately include the COVID years where rents were already influenced by other government restrictions and immediately be misaligned with today's market forces. The policy would discourage investment in and updating of rental properties, particularly among smaller mom and pop landlords who often operate on very thin margins. We respectfully urge you to vote no on AB 44. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Pazina and members of the Senate Committee. My name is Anahit Bakhshetyan. For the record, that is ANAHIT-BHEHSHETSYN, and I'm a research assistant at Nevada Policy. Today, we come in strong opposition of AB 44, and even if the bill is well-intentioned and aims to address terms as price gouging, price fixing, price manipulations, and all of the above that we heard today, the language is so broad that it risks to encompass all of the businesses that provide essential goods to people. Essential goods as identified in subsection 5 of section 1 is again very broad and ranges, as you know, from medical supplies to telecommunications, and risks businesses that are a heavy part of the Nevadan economy. I would like to bring just 2 points that we heard before. Number one, just a simple accusation, a survey, or a subjective judgment could risk any business who's participating in simple market and is trying to price goods. And this would effectively just discourage any entrepreneur to participate in any markets. So however justified, if something could expose them to liability, this is simply discouraging participation. And lastly, to Senator Ellison's point, this is in fact illegal, and Attorney General's office holds all the power to prosecute any actions of this sort. So a broad language that could harm small mom and pop shops is absolutely unnecessary and would harm Nevada's business-friendly reputation. So for those reasons, we urge the committee to oppose this legislation today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And with that, we will move to the phones broadcast. Do we have anyone on the phones who'd like to testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 44?
If you would like to testify in opposition of AB 44, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Hi, my name is Catherine Ivanov, Ivanoff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. If you want to fix the housing prices, make a bill that doesn't allow for corporations to buy thousands of them in one day and overpaying for houses, and essentially, in practicality, make it impossible for us regular people to buy houses. Mr. Ford also mentioned that there is a price gouging and price fixing bill already on the books. So I don't see what this is going to be helping. If you want to protect Nevada's consumers, allow more companies to offer electricity, garbage pickup, and other services that are right now only offered by one company. Only we pretty much are forced to use one company. This, to me, is an American. I've always been proud of America having choices. It's also against the capitalism principles on which America was built. So if you really want to help Nevada consumers, there are things to do, but this bill is not that. This bill also will create food deserts. We already have food deserts in Nevada. This bill would make more of them, which in turn will make the other stores' prices for food to go up. So the intent of the bill probably is good. I don't know what the intent of the bill is because the way it's written, there is no implementation of the bill that would give consumers of Nevada better prices and better protection, not to mention small businesses. It's going to technically kill a bunch of small businesses, and we don't need that. We already have not enough. A lot of small businesses died during Corona. We need to encourage more small businesses to come up instead of killing them.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ivanov. That was 2 minutes, and we would ask that you send your testimony in writing to our committee secretary so we can get any additional comments that you had. We only have a few more minutes for testimony in opposition, so I would ask that anyone else on the line keep their comments very brief, preferably to about 30 seconds. We thank you, and we'll take our next caller.
Wiz Razar, Deputy State Director with Americans for Prosperity here in Nevada. In interest of the time, as you said, Chair, we like to ditto everything everyone said, and we urge you to oppose this bill. Thank you.
Thank you for the brief comments. We appreciate it, and we have them on the record. Next caller, please.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. Good morning. Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Kimberly Fergus, Fergus, and for the sake of time, I ditto everything that everybody's already said. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, and you have a wonderful day as well. Ms. Fergus, next caller, please.
Good morning, Chair and Committee. My name is Jim DeGraffenreid, Jimdegraffenreid. I'm Nevada's Republican National Committeeman here today in opposition to AB 44. Our platform states very simply that we support a free market economy. It additionally states that we support a reduction in the scope of government at all levels. No matter how much the government may wish to disregard market forces and control the economy, such adventures generally end badly. In the case of AB 44 specifically, it references a long list of trade practices in NRS 598A0903 to 5980999, which would be considered price manipulation if following any of those practices results in a price increase above an arbitrary amount. Conversation earlier indicates that AB 44 creates very significant gray areas where there could be a reasonable argument about whether a practice is manipulative, potentially requiring business owners to incur significant legal fees to defend what may have been legitimate conduct. NRS 598A contains a long laundry list of trade practices across several subsections with references to multiple other sections included. The vagueness of the bill's language, the reliance on case law to define basic forces of supply and demand, and the expansive list of trade practices referenced puts Nevada business owners in danger of inappropriate enforcement.
Thank you so much, Mr. DeGraff and Reed. We'd ask that you send your comments in writing to our committee secretary, and we thank you so much because we only have a couple minutes. You're taking up everyone else's time, and we really appreciate it, but we want to give everyone a quick chance to speak, which is why we've asked for about 30 seconds. So callers, please give us your name, why you're opposed, and we thank you so much for your time today on AB 44.
My name is Mike Blank with CTIA, the Trade Association for the Wireless Industry, speaking in opposition. The Federal Communications Act clearly states that no state or local government shall have any authority to regulate the entry of or the rates charged by a commercial mobile service or any private mobile service. The bill specifically lists telecommunications services and internet services in Section 5A. Our members provide services that are inherently interstate, state-specific regulation, rather than helping consumers. This regulation would create needless compliance costs that could faster networks in lower places. Is important to our members, and that's why we are into the bill.
Thank you so much. It feels like we may have dropped that call, but we do have CTIA in opposition, and we thank them very much for their remarks. Is there anyone else on the line broadcast?
Caller, please continue.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Tammy Romo, T-A-M-I-R-O-M-O. I do ditto everything that the previous caller said. I just do want to add that if we have laws on the books that the supposed price gouging that Smiths have been doing and us being within the top 5 of the gas prices, we do need to follow through with those price gouging things that they're doing and implement those laws or follow through with those laws. Thank you.
Yolanda Canuck, Y-O-L-A-N-D-A, last name K-N-A-A-K. I agree with all the previous callers. Plus, in Incline Village, we have a program here for workforce housing, and I'm concerned that this will impede our homeowners to using this program. So please vote no. Thank you so much.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 760, please press *6 to unmute. Please continue.
Hello, this is Cynthia Perrine, C-Y-N-T-H-E-R-E-I-A, P-E-R-I-N-E. I am in opposition to this bill. I am grateful for the vigorous debate on both sides, but the preponderance of opposition, I will just say ditto, and thank you.
Chair, you have no more callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you so much. I would ask everyone at the table here in Carson City to very, very, very quickly share your opposition. Thank you.
Edith Duarte, D-U-A-R-T-E, today representing TechNet. We echo the same concerns already mentioned. I would only say that for us, our members, food delivery service platforms, e-commerce, TNCs, we're concerned about the liability being placed on them. They don't set the prices. However, they're facilitating the purchase or sale of a good or service. Thank you.
This is Sam Anastasados with the law firm Kemper Kroll on behalf of the Nevada Multifamily Alliance, and I'll provide a ditto and direct the committee to our letter that we submitted. Thank you.
Misty Grimmer, representing Cox Communications, and we also ditto the comments of the previous opposition. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We will take up to 3 more in Carson City, and that is it. So very quickly share your comments, and thank you.
Omar Salcedo, representing AT&T. We would like to ditto the comments of the previous presenters and also echo the concerns of TTIA, which submitted a letter for review. Thank you.
Donna Laffey with Ferrari Reader Public Affairs here on behalf of Verizon. To ditto exactly what Omar said. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Paige Barnes with the Frado Company here today on behalf of Lumen, and ditto to all of the comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please stand up if you had been planning to testify in opposition today and didn't get a chance. Okay, then I think we actually did get everyone. Thank you all so much for the vigorous debate today, and we really appreciate all of you being here to share your views. With that, we are going to move to neutral on Assembly Bill 44. Those in neutral may approach the table in our physical locations, then after that we'll move to the phones. And please begin when you're ready.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Paul Enos. I'm the CEO of the Nevada Trucking Association. We are neutral on Assembly Bill 44, although it does mention ground transportation. Trucking industry services will not be affected due to federal preemption under the Federal Aviation Act of 1994, and then a Supreme Court decision from Roe. In 2008, Roe versus New Hampshire Motor Transport Association. Additionally, in this chapter, 598A.040, Section 3 and 4 does exempt conduct authorized under federal and state statutes, as well as activity that's regulated under NRS 706, which is motor carriers, household good movers, tow operators, and taxi cabs. So that is exempted from this bill when you look at the applicable law. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, members of the committee. Cyrus Ojjati, Hojjaty. You can interrupt me if you don't think this is neutral testimony. I was undecided. I appreciate the Attorney General for bringing this issue. There's price gouging. It's real. You look at gas prices. I just drove from my home. I went through the state line, Minden, Carson City. I was shocked that gas prices are higher than they are, not just in Pahrump, but even in Clark County and even in Elko. And I read the news and I found out that a Bay Area refinery had an outage. I've been addressing this issue for years. And they say it's outage. It's hard to believe because I have a feeling it was done purposely to gouge prices, not only in California, but even here. And you look back in 2022, when Ukraine was invaded, the Western United States had a gas price surge of $1.50 a gallon, and the rest of the country was 70 cents. In March of 2022, what happened, honestly? Now, I think that if we would have enforced our antitrust laws, you go back 100 years ago, much of this price gouging would have not happened. And I agree, capitalism has its issues. I think all 4 isms, to be honest with you, are horrible. But anyway, if you look at 20 years ago, if we would have prevented the merger of Caesars and MGM, we would have not had all these. Maybe we would have had the budget shortfall. Think about it. And our unemployment rate prior to the financial crisis was one of the lowest in the country. So I appreciate this bill is bringing forward. This is a great discussion. However, I am concerned that nearly half of the Assembly people voted no. So I'm just curious to know what's going on. Anyway, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And right under that 2-minute cover. All right. Moving to the phone lines. Broadcast, do we have anyone who'd like to testify in neutral on Assembly Bill 44?
If you would like to testify neutral on AB 44, please press star 9 now. Chair, you have no callers neutral at this time.
Thank you so much. With that, we are going to ask for a very brief closing statement from the Attorney General.
Thanks, Chair Pazina. Aaron Ford for the record with my colleague Mark Kruger. Lots of hyperbole, a little subterfuge, some misleading, I think, inadvertent misleading, specifically about the $2 million fine. Let me be clear, it was the other way around. The price on the shelf was lower than what was being charged at the counter, being charged at the checkout. And yes, it was a $2 million fine. It was against Walmart. It is something that we have talked about. It was a complaint we got directly out of a constituent in Reno, and we cut a deal with them, and they have fixed their policies going forward. So I'm not quite. I'm going to chalk it up to a mistake in a recitation of the facts in that regard. But that's what happened in that regard. The generic drug industry came up here. Let me remind you, we are suing them right now on price fixing. A whole bunch of Democratic AGs have worked together to, it's a bipartisan association, actually, of AGs suing the Generic Drug Association in that regard for price fixing. And that is indeed a central good that will be covered under this as well. Many of those who testified in opposition over in the Assembly. And again, as I said at the opening of my testimony, I offered them on the record the ability to bring me anything they wanted me to consider relative to trying to modify or amend this bill. And to my recollection, not one who complained has brought forth anything that would accommodate concerns. And principally, it's because, frankly, I don't think they are interested in having a price-fixing bill that is going to get rid of manipulative conduct. And so the onus is upon us as the advocates for the consumers, who are those elected to represent them, to bring forth these bills to do exactly that. And that's the intent and that's the effort here. What we did do, even though they didn't come to us and ask, I heard complaints about the private right of action that was in the initial iteration. And so to hear, for example, one of the first members to testify to say that this bill is worse than the first bill was a surprise, because they complained about the private right of action that was initially in the first reprint, and we removed that. It does not exist in this particular bill. So we will continue to work, and we remain open to receiving any information from any of those who testified in opposition. If they have anything in good faith they want to bring forth for us to consider, we will consider it. Now, the last thing that I'll say before, I know real brief, and I'm going to let him, if he has something to say, real brief. I'll just say that, we did address price gouging. It only applies during an emergency, though. And we did address price gouging as it relates to gas prices in particular. And so I wanted to note that, because I think there was one of the commenters asking questions about enforcing that particular piece of legislation as well. So absent any other questions, I will tender the mic real quickly to Mark, and we will leave you to your devices.
Thank you, General Ford. Mark Kruger for the record. 2 points only. One is we wanted to point out that we did consult with an economist to create the chart and the categories that we created. So it wasn't without using an economist. We did use one. In addition to that, I just wanted to explain that we also worked with stakeholders that brought up this. It's easy to throw out the words vague or confusing and difficult, but we actually worked with stakeholders, and that's why we redefined and further refined the examples of violations of Deceptive Trade Practices Act to identify what manipulation was. And so we included that in the reprint as well.
Thank you so much. And with that, we will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 44. And we thank you so much for taking the time to be here and for the robust discussion today. And we will open our final bill hearing. And we ask that you keep this quick. But I think with all the work that's been done on this bill, and I would direct everyone to look at Nellis at the amendment. We're going to open the hearing on Assembly Bill 250, revising provisions relating to certain debt. And welcome Assembly Member Golding. Thank you for hanging in with us this morning.
Thank you, and thank you for giving us the opportunity. We appreciate that. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. I'm Heather Goulding. I represent Assembly District 27 in North Reno. It's my honor to present AB 250 today, along with my colleagues from the Nevada Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence and Legal Aid of Southern Nevada. AB 250 represents a collaborative effort between domestic violence survivor advocates and the financial industry. The broad stakeholder group that worked on this bill recognizes the devastating effects of domestic and sexual violence and of financial coercion that frequently traps victims in these relationships. The cooperative effort has resulted in a bipartisan, bicameral bill which offers hope to individuals who often see no way out of abusive relationships. AB 250 adds the definition of coercive debt to Nevada statute that can be used as a legal defense in civil actions to collect consumer debt when that debt has been coerced. I'd like to turn the presentation over to Serena Evans to provide more information about what coercive debt is and why this bill advances meaningful change in Nevada to protect victim survivors.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Serena Evans, Policy Director with the Nevada Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence. As the Assembly member mentioned, AB 250 is a critical piece of legislation that recognizes the deep and lasting harm caused by coerced debt. I also want to thank all the stakeholders who have collaborated with us to get us to where we are today, so that we can allow victim survivors to have a legal pathway to challenge debt taken out in their name without their consent. Coerced debt can be complex, but the act itself is alarmingly common. It is a tactic used in many abusive relationships to systemically strip victims of financial autonomy and freedom. And coerced debt itself is when an abuser uses threats, manipulation, force, fraud, or coercion to incur debt in a victim's name. This concept is not new. During the 2022 VAWA, Victims of Violence Against Women Act reauthorization, the definition of domestic violence was expanded to include coerced debt and economic abuse. And since then, the anti-violence movement is now urgently addressing this issue and collecting data on how pervasive it is. Nationwide, 99% of survivors reported experiencing economic abuse with domestic violence, and 52% of DV survivors had coerced or fraudulent debt, with 46% reporting credit damage. In a 2020 survey of survivors, it was found that 2 in 3 survivors discovered coerced debt only after directly receiving a bill or after being contacted by a debt collector. Of those in that survey, another 25% of survivors found that they had debt by accidentally seeing the bill. And then by the time the unpaid debts are discovered, survivors already have consumer debt judgments, which have led to wage garnishments or bank account restraint. Once coerced debt has been taken out in an individual's name, they face lifelong impacts and barriers. In fact, those who know about the coerced debt often stay in an abusive relationship far longer than they would have had they not had a damaged credit score or depleted financial resources. And when a victim survivor is able to leave, the incurred debt in their name has an economic ripple effect that impacts every aspect of their safety and well-being. In my work on AB 250, I've spoke with numerous victim survivors and advocates who have shared the real-life impacts of coerced debt, and I just want to leave you with a brief quote from a victim survivor. Liz, who is a 44-year-old single mother of 2, shared with me, "I am financially ruined. I will recover over time, but the state, the laws do nothing to protect people in my position. Liz deserves better. All victim survivors deserve better, and it is time that Nevada joins the growing movement to address coerced debt and ensure justice for survivors." And at this time, I'll hand it over to Peter Aldos with Southern Nevada Legal Aid down in Las Vegas.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Peter Aldous, staff attorney with Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada. I'm going to walk you through the conceptual amendment on the current version of the bill, because as we've mentioned, we've gone through with stakeholders, really narrowed this and made it effective to protect victim survivors. So the current bill establishes an affirmative defense of coerced debt. It defines coerced debt. This affirmative defense is only available for victims of sex trafficking and domestic violence. But when a victim is sued in court, they are able to raise this defense. They do need to provide an attested to statement as part of raising that defense. They need to describe how the debt was incurred. They need to include a police report or other official record. They do need to include any information about the identity and contact information of the individual who caused the coerced debt to be incurred, if that does not impact their safety, and a number of times that they have successfully or unsuccessfully raised this defense. At that point, the judge then determines whether or not the elements of this affirmative defense are met. And if so, then the creditor cannot collect that debt anymore. However, the court can add the perpetrator as a new defendant, and therefore the perpetrator, rather than the creditor, will be responsible for the debt. That basically is where we've ended up after a lot of negotiations. And I believe that this is a very effective tool, at least in my practice, in defending people who are sued for debts that they did not incur through their own volition. I'm now happy to answer any questions about the bill.
Thank you so much for the presentation, and thank you for all the work you did to get this bill to where it is now, and we appreciate the work. Do I see any questions from the committee? Okay. Well, I think you had the good fortune of coming after AB 44. So we thank you so much for the presentation, and we will open this up for testimony in support of Assembly Bill 250. Do keep your comments brief here at the table as we're running into late morning, and we thank you all very much for being here.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. My name is Nick Shepek, N-I-C-K-S-H-E-P-A-C-K. I am the Nevada State Director of the Fines and Fees Justice Center. We work around fines and fees in the criminal justice system. However, you can not divorce victims of coercive debt from being involved in the criminal justice system, whether they have gotten involved due to necessities to survive or as part of the coercion and abuse. We see this bill as a major step in ensuring that they become financially stable and can exit both the criminal justice system and this coercive debt. We ask you for your support. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Tara Webster, T-A-R-A-W-E-B-S-T-E-R. I'm the policy manager with the Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada in support of AB 250. The issue of course debt doesn't just impact women. It can impact everyone no matter gender, race, or social class, and it can come from the most unlikely places and faces. Victims of economic abuse don't talk about their abuse often because of the shame and stigma. Plan believes that this bill offers the necessary legal protections to free victim survivors from their abusers. We urge your support.
Thank you, Chair Pazina, members of the committee. Daniel Stewart, D-A-N-I-E-L-S-T-W-A-R-T, here on behalf of Clark County Collection Services and the Nevada Collectors Association. We are in full support of the bill and want to thank the sponsor and the stakeholders for the numerous discussions and work on this bill. One thing that was really good to work with and really and somewhat inspiring on a bill is they never lost sight, anyone in the room, on what we were trying to accomplish in protecting some of the most vulnerable victims in all of Nevada. So full support of this bill. I think this is a very good piece of legislation that sends the right message and actually will have real teeth. Thank you.
Good morning, Donna Laffey with Ferrari Reader Public Affairs here on behalf of Receivables Management Association International. RMAI is a nonprofit trade association representing the financial services industry, including banks, credit unions, non-bank lenders, collection agencies, debt buying companies, and law firms. RMAI wants to thank the bill sponsor for bringing all the stakeholders together on this, and we support the amended version of the bill. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Madison Proctor, M-A-D-D-I-S-O-N-P-R-O-C-T-O-R. I'm speaking on behalf, of the Women's Nevada Lobby in New Day, Nevada, in support of AB 250. I'll just keep it short. We are dittoing everything, and this bill is more than a policy change. It's a lifeline. Thanks.
Cyrus Hojati, H-O-J-J-A-T-Y. I support. Thank you. Ditto.
Thank you so much. I don't see anyone in Las Vegas, so we're going to move to the phone lines. Broadcast, do we have anyone on the phone lines who'd like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 250?
If you would like to testify in support of AB 250, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Hi, Katrina Ivanov, I-V-A-N-O-F-S, and I want to express big support to this bill. I've been fortunate enough to not be in any violent situations, but I do have family members that have been, and I have witnessed how stuck they have been. So I'm really glad that you guys are having this bill proposed, and please vote yes. Thank you, and have a lovely day.
Hi, Liz Ortenberger for the record, L-I-Z-O-R-T-E-N-B-U-R-G-E-R. CEO for SafeNest, and financial coercion is something that we often deal with the over 11,000 survivors that we serve every year. This bill helps bridge an important gap for us, and SafeNest stands in support. Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Renee Ruiz, RENEE RUIZ. I'm with National Nurses United, representing the interests of 3,000 plus RNs in the state of Nevada, and we support this bill. Thank you.
Chair, you have no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you so much. We're going to stick with you for now, broadcast. Is there anyone who'd like to testify in opposition on Assembly Bill 250?
If you would like to testify in opposition of AB 250, please press star 9. Chair, you have no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you so much. Do we have anyone in our physical locations who'd like to testify in opposition? Look at that. I don't see anyone. So we're going to move to neutral. Anyone who'd like to testify in neutral in our physical locations on Assembly Bill 250? Please approach the desk, and after we hear from you, we will move to the phones.
Chair Pazina, members of the committee, Connor Kane on behalf of the Nevada Bankers Association. We are very enthusiastically in neutral with the conceptual amendment from the sponsor on Nellis. I do want to acknowledge and thank the sponsor for tireless work on this, and also Ms. Evans, Mr. Norman, and Mr. Aldos. And I think what's great about this bill, and in conversations with Mr. Aldos, who I think would be representing the victims that we've talked about in a lot of these cases, this is a tool that he and Legal Aid could really use to help people. And from our perspective, and from the perspective of members of the Nevada Bankers Association, this is within a framework that our members can operationalize. And so we're very happy to be here today in neutral. And again, thank everyone for their work.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. Brian Reeder speaking on behalf of Nevada's credit unions. We just want to echo the comments from Mr. Kane. Thank the bill sponsor and bill proponents for bringing all the stakeholders together and getting us all to a place where we're neutral on the bill.
Good morning, Chair Bazina, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Nick Schneider, Director of Government Affairs for the Vegas Chamber. I would like to thank Assemblymember Goulding for all of her work on this bill, and I could not say it better than my colleague, Mr. Kane, so ditto.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. Dave Daslich with McDonald Carano here today representing the Consumer Data Industry Association. I'll ditto the comments from Mr. Kane and would like to offer thanks to the bill sponsor for all of her work with all the stakeholders on this bill.
Thank you all so much. Do we have anyone on the phone lines broadcast who'd like to testify in neutral on Assembly Bill 250?
If you would like to testify neutral on AB 250, please press star 9 now. Chair, you have no callers neutral at this time.
Thank you so much. Assemblymember Goulding, if you'd like to make any closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Heather Goulding, for the record. That was a really speedy presentation. So if you have any questions, please please let me know if you have any additional comments or questions. We're just so deeply appreciative of all the folks that have worked together to the place where we're at. Thanks.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your hard work on that legislation, to you and Ms. Evans. And with that, we will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 250 and move to our final order of business on the agenda, which is public comment. We will start in our physical locations as always, and then we will move to the telephones for anyone who'd like to testify, or excuse me, who'd like to make any comment on anything other than the bills that were discussed today, which are germane to commerce and labor. And with that, I don't see anyone coming to the tables in our physical locations, but broadcast, we would welcome anyone who'd like to speak on the phone lines.
If you would like to testify or participate in public comment, please press star 9 now.
Hi, Katrina Ivanov, IVANOFF. I just wanted to say that I'm very happy on how today's hearing went. There was a lot of questions on bunch of the bills, and it was easier for us, the listeners that haven't read the whole bill, to get better understanding of the bill. And quite frankly, I don't even think even assembly people read all the bills, but I could be wrong. I'm not an assembly person. And I just want to say that I'm very happy there was nobody in opposition for AB 250, that the Abusers International chose not to send a representative. And thank you for the hard work, everyone. And I'm sure we're going to hear each other soon. Have a lovely day.
Chair, you have no more callers wishing to participate at this time.
Thank you so much. With that, we will look forward to seeing everyone back here on Wednesday morning, May 14th at 8 a.m., where there will be further work sessions and further hearings as we approach the deadline. Thank you so much, everyone, and we are adjourned.